Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, the rest of the bedroom was pristine, white linens, polished floors, not a speck of dust. But when detectives opened the hallway closet, they found the inside walls clawed raw. Deep, uneven grooves marked the wood from waist level down. Something or someone had tried desperately to get out. Detective Lee Mercer stood in silence, her flashlight beam fixed on the scratches. 23 years on the force, and she'd never seen anything quite like this. The Springfield Police Department had received a call that morning from a landlord who hadn't heard from his tenant in weeks. Mail piling up, rent unpaid. A familiar story that usually ended with finding someone who'd simply moved away without notice. Not this time. The tenant was Eliza Palmer, 34, kindergarten teacher at Oak Ridge Elementary. Unmarried, no children, moved to Springfield, Massachusetts 3 years ago from Portland, Oregon. By all accounts, a quiet woman who kept to herself but was well liked by colleagues and neighbors alike. Always had a smile, her neighbor Mrs. Hernandez had told officers earlier. Didn't make waves, brought me soup when I was sick last winter. The apartment told a different story now. Food rotting in the refrigerator. A half-empty coffee mug on the kitchen counter with a film of mold floating on top. The television remote placed perfectly parallel to the edge of the coffee table. Everything looked ordinary except for those scratches, desperate and frantic, inside the closet door. "Get CSI in here," Mercer called to her partner, Detective Ryan Walsh. "I want every inch of this closet processed." Walsh nodded, already on his phone. At 41, he was a decade younger than Mercer, but carried himself with the weary posture of someone who'd seen too much. "Time of death?" he asked, glancing toward the bedroom where the medical examiner was still working. "Ballpark 3 weeks, the ME called out. "I'll know more after the autopsy." 3 weeks, the same time frame as the missed rent payment and unanswered calls. Eliza Palmer's body had been found in her bed, positioned as if sleeping. No visible trauma, no signs of struggle. If not for the apartment's state of neglect and those haunting scratches in the closet, it might have looked like she'd passed peacefully in her sleep. "Who found her?" Walsh asked, though he already knew the answer from the initial report. "Landlord Joseph Carver," Mercer replied, jotting notes in her small black notebook. "Says he used his key after multiple unanswered calls and visits." The responding officers had already interviewed Carver, a balding man in his 60s who owned several properties in the area. He'd seemed genuinely shaken, retching in the bushes outside after discovering the body. No prior complaints against him. No history with the deceased beyond their landlord-tenant relationship. For the next 6 hours, the small apartment transformed into a clinical crime scene. Fingerprint powder covered surfaces. Evidence markers dotted the floors. Photographers documented everything from the medicine cabinet contents to the arrangement of shoes by the front door. And always, investigators returned to that closet, measuring and photographing each desperate gouge in the wood. "Got something," a technician called out as evening fell. She held up a plastic evidence bag containing several broken fingernails. Found these embedded in the deeper scratches. Mercer examined the bag. The nails matched the pale pink polish still visible on Eliza's fingers, though most of her nails were broken to the quick, the beds caked with blood and wood splinters. "So she was locked in the closet," Walsh stated flatly. "Died there." "No," Mercer said slowly. Me found her in bed. Someone moved her after death. The preliminary toxicology report came back 3 days later. Eliza Palmer had died from a massive overdose of benzodiazepines mixed with alcohol. Her stomach contents revealed partially digested pills and red wine. No signs of forced ingestion. No defensive wounds beyond her damaged fingernails. Suicide, Walsh suggested as they reviewed the file in their cramped office. The walls were covered with photos of Eliza's apartment, the closet scratches enlarged to show their depth and direction. With that closet, no way, Mercer countered. Someone drugged her, locked her in there, then arranged her body after she died. They dug deeper into Eliza's life. Interviews with colleagues revealed a dedicated teacher who rarely missed work. Her principal described her as conscientious to a fault. Phone records showed regular calls to her mother in Oregon, her last being the night before her estimated date of death. Bank statements appeared normal until they found a series of cash withdrawals in the months before her death, $500 every 2 weeks, an unusual pattern for someone whose regular expenses were all paid electronically. Blackmail, Walsh suggested. Maybe, Mercer agreed, but for what? They found their first real lead in Eliza's email. Buried among teaching correspondence and Amazon receipts were messages from an encrypted address. Most were brief, arranging meetings at a local cafe. The final message, sent 3 days before her estimated death date, read simply, "We need to talk about what you saw. Tomorrow, same place." The cafe owner remembered Eliza as a regular who often sat alone with her laptop. Security footage from nearby businesses showed her meeting with someone in the weeks before her death, a man who kept his face hidden beneath a baseball cap, whose identity remained frustratingly obscured from cameras. On day 9 of the investigation, they received a break. A partial fingerprint from Eliza's bedroom doorframe matched one in the system, belonging to Marshall Kent, a former colleague of Eliza's from Portland. Kent had a record, arrested twice for stalking. Charges dropped both times when the complainant suddenly refused to testify. They brought him in for questioning, a wiry man with intelligent eyes and an unnervingly calm demeanor. "I was in town visiting Eliza," he admitted easily. "We're old friends. I was worried about her." "Worried why?" Mercer pressed. "She'd been acting paranoid, said someone was watching her." Kent's expression remained neutral. "I stayed with her a couple of nights to ease her mind." "When was this?" "About a month ago. Before she died." Kent's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that what happened? I've been trying to reach her." Walsh slid a photo of the closet scratches across the table. Kent barely glanced at it. "Did you lock her in there, Marshall?" Mercer asked quietly. "No," a single word delivered without emotion. They couldn't hold him without more evidence, but they placed him under surveillance. Meanwhile, they kept digging into Eliza's past. The connection to Kent led them back to Portland, where they discovered both had worked at a private school that closed abruptly 5 years ago following a financial scandal. The headmaster had embezzled millions before disappearing overseas. According to former staff, Eliza had worked in the administrative office with access to the school's financial records. She was a witness, Mercer realized, maybe even an accomplice who turned. 3 weeks into the investigation, they uncovered a safety deposit box in Eliza's name containing $50,000 in cash and a USB drive. The drive held financial documents, evidence of the embezzlement scheme, and emails implicating not just the headmaster, but also Marshall Kent and 3 board members. When they went to arrest Kent, he was gone. His apartment emptied, his car abandoned at a long-term parking lot near Boston's Logan Airport. Despite an interstate manhunt, Kent remained elusive. Facial recognition caught him at airports in Chicago, then Denver, before the trail went cold. The case stalled, becoming another folder in the growing stack of unsolved mysteries. 6 months later, a package arrived at the Springfield Police Department addressed to Detective Mercer. Inside was a postcard from Belize with no message, just a single fingerprint pressed in what appeared to be blood. Analysis confirmed it matched Eliza Palmer's. The case remains officially open. Eliza's apartment has been rented to new tenants, the closet walls repaired and repainted, hiding all evidence of those desperate final hours. But occasionally Mercer wakes in the night, imagining the terror of being trapped in darkness, the slow realization that the drugs in your system are winning, and your frantic scratching against unyielding wood is the last sound you'll ever make. To this day, Marshall Kent remains on the FBI's wanted list, and somewhere perhaps he sleeps soundly, or perhaps he too lies awake, haunted by the sound of fingernails scraping desperately against wood. Crime 2, the grave had been disturbed just enough to catch the attention of the cemetery caretaker. The casket was intact, sealed, but when the coroner ordered it exhumed, what they found made the room fall silent, her hands clenched tight, her fingernails shattered, and her eyes wide open, staring straight up. Claire Everly had lived in Pinewood, Michigan her entire life, a town of just under 8,000 people, where generations of families knew each other's business, secrets, and sins. At 43, Claire worked as a records clerk at the county courthouse, a job that gave her access to files most residents would never see. She lived alone in her childhood home after her mother passed 5 years earlier, tending to a garden that neighbors often complimented but never received invitations to visit. Those who knew Claire described her as reserved but kind. She volunteered at the local library on weekends, reading to children with a gentle voice that seemed to transform her otherwise rigid demeanor. Her colleague Martha Winters would later tell investigators that Claire had been acting strangely in the weeks before her death. She was organizing her files meticulously, leaving notes for procedures that everyone already knew. It was like she was preparing to leave. On November 12, 2023, Claire didn't show up for work. This wasn't like her. In 22 years of employment, she had never missed a day without calling in advance. Martha called Claire's home phone, then her rarely used cell. No answer. By noon, Martha contacted Claire's cousin, Thomas Everly, the only family member still living in Pinewood. Thomas found Claire's house unlocked, unusual for someone as cautious as his cousin. Her car was in the driveway, her purse sat on the kitchen counter. A cup of tea, half consumed, had left a ring on the dining room table. The house was silent except for the steady tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. In Claire's bedroom, Thomas found her lying peacefully on her bed. She wore a navy blue dress he recognized from their last family gathering. Her hands were folded over her chest. There was no sign of struggle, no evidence of pain. The medical examiner would later determine that Claire had died from an apparent heart attack, though she had no history of cardiac issues. The funeral was small, attended mostly by courthouse employees and a few distant relatives. Claire was buried in the family plot at Pinewood Cemetery, beneath the sprawling oak trees she had admired in life. The case might have ended there another quiet death in a quiet town if not for Gregory Mills, the cemetery caretaker who noticed something unusual 3 weeks later. The soil was disturbed, Mills told Detective Laura Sanderson when she arrived at the scene. not like animals or settling. Someone had been here. Detective Sanderson initially suspected vandalism, a problem that occasionally plagued rural cemeteries, but nothing was damaged. No headstones toppled, no graffiti, just the subtle displacement of earth over Claire Everly's grave. The decision to exhume the body came after security footage from a nearby church showed a figure visiting the cemetery after midnight on 3 consecutive nights. Too distant to identify, but clearly human, deliberate. What they found when they opened Claire's casket defied simple explanation. Her body showed signs of movement after death, her fingernails broken to the quick, the satin lining of the casket scratched and torn near her hands, and her eyes wide open in an expression that the coroner's assistant would later describe as pure terror. The autopsy revealed something the initial examination had missed: trace amounts of tetrodotoxin in Claire's system, a neurotoxin known to induce a death-like state while leaving the victim conscious. In extreme cases, it could lower heart rate and respiration to levels undetectable without sophisticated equipment. She was buried alive, Detective Sanderson told her partner as they drove back to the station. But who would do this, and why Claire? The investigation turned to Claire's work at the courthouse. Had she seen something in those files, something dangerous enough to warrant such a calculated, cruel death? Martha Winters provided the first meaningful lead. 6 weeks before her death, Claire had been unusually interested in a property dispute from 1978, an old case involving land that now housed Pinewood's largest employer, Nortec Pharmaceuticals. Claire had made copies of documents, something strictly against protocol. She told me some of the signatures didn't match, Martha recalled. She thought the judge's signature had been forged on the final ruling. Detective Sanderson obtained a warrant to search Claire's home again. In the basement, behind a loose brick in the foundation wall, they found a waterproof container. Inside were the copied documents from the courthouse, along with handwritten notes comparing signatures and photographs of land surveys that showed discrepancies in property lines. Most disturbing was a list of names, 7 in total. 6 were crossed out. The last name on the list was Judge Michael Harrington, who had presided over the original case and still served on the bench. Beside his name was a question mark and a date, November 10th, 2023, 2 days before Claire's death. When questioned, Judge Harrington claimed he barely remembered Claire Everly. Just another courthouse employee, he said, his fingers drumming steadily on his desk. But phone records showed 5 calls between the judge's private line and Claire's cell phone in the week before her death. Detective Sanderson began connecting the other names on Claire's list. All had connections to the 1978 property dispute. The former mayor, the county assessor, a surveyor, the original property owner, 2 lawyers involved in the case. All had died over the past 40 years, natural causes, accidents, 1 suicide, nothing suspicious when viewed individually. But collectively, the pattern was unsettling. The breakthrough came when Sanderson interviewed Judge Harrington's longtime clerk, Elaine Davis. After hours of careful questioning, Elaine revealed that the judge had been unusually agitated after Claire's funeral. He kept saying it had to be done. Some secrets need to stay buried. I thought he was just upset about losing a colleague. A search of Harrington's home office revealed a book on rare poisons with the page on tetrodotoxin dog-eared. In his garage, they found a shovel with traces of soil matching the composition at Pinewood Cemetery. When confronted with the evidence, Harrington didn't confess. Instead, he spoke of necessity, of protecting the town's economic foundation. Nortec employs half the town, he said, his voice steady, reasonable. The property dispute was complicated. If the original ruling was overturned now, Nortec would leave. Pinewood would die. "So you buried Claire alive?" Detective Sanderson asked. "I didn't know she would wake up," Harrington replied, his first show of emotion a flicker of what might have been regret. The dosage should have been lethal, quick, painless. She wasn't supposed to suffer. As the case moved toward trial, more details emerged about the 1978 property dispute. The land had been taken from the original owner through manipulated documents and judicial corruption. Nortec had paid handsomely for the judge's ruling. The 6 crossed-out names on Claire's list had all discovered parts of the truth over the years. Each had died before they could expose it. Judge Michael Harrington was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The trial was moved to a neighboring county due to the impossibility of finding impartial jurors in Pinewood. The prosecution's case was strong, built on physical evidence, digital records, and Harrington's own statements. Yet questions remained. Had Harrington acted alone in Claire's murder? Were there others involved in the decades-long cover-up? And what about the midnight visitor to Claire's grave? Was it Harrington checking his handiwork, or someone else entirely? The cemetery caretaker, Gregory Mills, swore there was something he wasn't telling investigators. "Sometimes," he said, looking toward the oak trees that shadowed Claire's buried remains, "I hear scratching at night, like fingernails on wood, coming from her plot." Detective Sanderson dismissed this as the imagination of a man who spent too much time among the dead. But sometimes, driving past the cemetery during her investigation, she would slow down and listen, just to be sure. In the quiet town of Pinewood, Michigan, people still whisper about Claire Everly, about what she discovered in those courthouse files, about the judge who valued progress over justice, about the woman buried with her eyes open, who may have seen more in death than anyone was comfortable acknowledging in life. Some secrets are buried, some secrets claw their way out. Crime 3, it rang once, just once, then stopped. The call log was empty, the contacts list wiped clean. But when investigators powered it down, a video began playing by itself, a girl whispering in the dark. Behind her, a shadow shifted just beyond the camera's edge, and she mouthed something no one could quite understand. Detective Sarah Mercer had been with the Oakwood Police Department for 17 years. She'd worked homicides, kidnappings, and every flavor of human tragedy that could befall a mid-sized Connecticut town. But something about this case, about 23-year-old Eliza Chambers, felt different from the beginning. Eliza had been living in Oakwood for only 8 months. A recent graduate from the University of Michigan with a degree in environmental science, she moved east for a position at the local Watershed Protection Agency. Colleagues described her as meticulous, quietly confident, the kind of person who would annotate research papers in different colored pens and keep a spreadsheet of her houseplants' watering schedules. She was structured, her supervisor, Dr. Alan Weiss, told Detective Mercer during their first interview at the agency's offices. He kept adjusting his glasses, pushing them up his nose only for them to slide down again. Not rigid, mind you, just organized. She found comfort in systems. Eliza lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment on Maple Street, a tree-lined avenue with well-maintained brownstones divided into rental units. Her neighbors knew her only in passing, a nod in the stairwell, a brief exchange about the temperamental radiators. The woman in apartment 3B remembered Eliza mentioning a boyfriend back in Michigan, but couldn't recall his name. just that Eliza had said it was complicated. October 17th was a Tuesday. According to her coworkers, Eliza left the office at exactly 5:30 p.m. as she did every weekday. Security footage showed her walking to the bus stop on Main Street at 5:42 p.m. The number 86 bus dropped her off 3 blocks from her apartment at 6:14 p.m. After that, nothing. No credit card transactions, no calls made or received on her cell phone, no activity on her social media accounts. The next morning, when Eliza didn't show up for an important presentation, Dr. Weiss called her cell phone. When that went unanswered, he called her emergency contact, her mother, Patricia Chambers, who lived in Lansing, Michigan. Patricia hadn't heard from her daughter in 2 days. This wasn't entirely unusual. Eliza was independent, absorbed in her work, but when Patricia tried calling and texting, there was no response. By midday, she'd filed a missing person report with the Oakwood Police Department. By evening, Detective Mercer was standing outside Eliza's apartment door with the building superintendent. The apartment was immaculate, bed made with hospital corners, dishes cleaned and put away, a single coffee mug in the dish drainer. The superintendent commented that it looked exactly as it had during his inspection 3 months earlier. But something was wrong. Detective Mercer felt it immediately. "There's no coat," she said, opening the small entryway closet. "It's October in Connecticut, and there's no coat hanging up. No umbrella either, and it was raining yesterday." More concerning, Eliza's laptop was open on her desk, the screen dark but powered on. When Detective Mercer pressed a key, the login screen appeared. Next to it was a notebook, open to a blank page with only the date, October 17, written at the top. The bathroom yielded the first truly unsettling detail. The shower curtain was missing. Not fallen, not removed for cleaning, just gone, rings still hanging empty on the rod above the tub. Patricia Chambers arrived from Michigan the following day. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen when Detective Mercer met her at the station. "Eliza's very routine-oriented," Patricia explained, clutching a tissue in her hand so tightly it had started to disintegrate. "Ever since she was little, she likes knowing what comes next." Patricia spoke about her daughter in the present tense, a detail Detective Mercer noted without comment. "Any boyfriends, friends in the area?" Mercer asked. Patricia shook her head. She mentioned colleagues sometimes, but no one close. There was a boy in Michigan, Mason, but they broke up before she moved here. She paused, then added, it wasn't good between them at the end. He wanted her to stay in Michigan. When asked about the video call 3 days before Eliza disappeared, Patricia looked confused. What video call? According to Eliza's phone records, she'd made a video call lasting 17 minutes to an unregistered number on the Saturday before she vanished. The number couldn't be traced. It appeared to be a burner phone. 4 days into the investigation, Detective Mercer received a call from the tech department. They'd been examining Eliza's laptop and discovered something odd. A series of encrypted files had been created in the hours before her disappearance. When decrypted, they contained nothing but strings of numbers. Could be anything, the tech specialist told her. Coordinates, times, dates, or just random digits. That same afternoon, a security camera from a convenience store 2 miles from Eliza's apartment captured footage of someone who appeared to be her. The timestamp read 11:43 p.m. on October 17th. In the grainy footage, a woman wearing a dark raincoat stood at the corner of the frame, partially obscured by a display of snack foods. Her face was mostly hidden, but the height and build matched Eliza's. She wasn't purchasing anything, just standing as if waiting for someone. The store clerk didn't remember seeing her. On the sixth day, Eliza's phone was found in Bridgewater Park, a wooded area about 4 miles from her apartment. It was placed carefully on a bench, not dropped or forgotten, but deliberately positioned. When the forensic tech tried to access it, they found it had been wiped clean. No contacts, no photos, no call history. But something was still on the phone. When they powered it down, a video began playing automatically, a hidden file that had been programmed to activate when the device shut down. In the video, which lasted only 12 seconds, Eliza appeared to be in a dark room. She was whispering something, her face close to the camera, her expression urgent but not panicked. Behind her, a shadow moved. Analysis of the audio revealed only ambient noise and what sounded like water dripping. Lip-reading experts were consulted, but could only make out a few words with certainty, not what and possibly beneath. The phone had no SIM card. Detective Mercer returned to Eliza's apartment building to question neighbors again. The woman in 3B mentioned something she'd forgotten in her initial statement. About a week before Eliza disappeared, she'd seen her talking to a man in the lobby. They weren't arguing exactly, the neighbor said, but she seemed tense, like she was trying to keep her voice down but had a lot to say. When asked to describe the man, the neighbor hesitated. Average height, dark hair, I think. He was wearing a jacket with some kind of logo on it. She couldn't remember what the logo was, just that it had caught her eye. 8 days after Eliza vanished, they found her car. It had been parked at a long-term lot near the regional airport, the ticket showing it had been left there on October 17th at 10:15 p.m. Inside the glove compartment was a receipt from a gas station in Millfield, a small town about 30 miles north of Oakwood. The purchase, a single bottle of water at 9:42 p.m. The gas station's security camera showed Eliza buying the water. She was alone and appeared calm. She paid with cash. When she left, she turned not toward the highway that would lead back to Oakwood, but toward a secondary road that wound into more rural areas. Millfield was home to just over 2,000 people. Its main street consisted of a post office, a bank, a grocery store, and a diner that closed at 8 p.m. Beyond the town center were farms and scattered houses, many set back from the road and hidden by trees. One of these properties belonged to a man named Edward Gaines, 57 years old, divorced, no children. He'd worked as a hydrologist for a private environmental consulting firm until his retirement 3 years earlier. Before that, he'd taught at several universities, including the University of Michigan. The connection was too specific to be coincidental. When Detective Mercer ran a background check, she found that Gaines had been a visiting professor during Eliza's sophomore year. He had taught a course on watershed management, Eliza's precise field of study. When police arrived at Gaines' property, they found it vacant. Neighbors reported that he traveled frequently and had mentioned a trip to visit family on the West Coast. Inside the house, everything was in order. No signs of disturbance, no evidence that Eliza had ever been there. But in the detached garage, investigators found a plastic shower curtain, neatly folded. Laboratory analysis would later confirm that microscopic water droplets on the curtain matched the chemical profile of the water in Eliza's apartment building. 13 days after Eliza disappeared, Edward Gaines was located in a motel in Oregon. When questioned, he admitted to having been in contact with Eliza, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. According to Gaines, Eliza had reached out to him months earlier with concerns about data she discovered while working at the Watershed Agency. She found discrepancies, he told investigators, contaminant levels that didn't match official reports. She thought someone was falsifying test results. When asked about his whereabouts on October 17th, Gaines produced receipts showing he'd been in Boston that entire day, attending a conference on environmental policy. Security footage from the conference venue confirmed his presence. The investigation continued. The numbers from Eliza's encrypted files were analyzed again, this time by an environmental scientist. They proved to be geographical coordinates paired with contamination levels, locations along the river that supplied Oakwood's drinking water, showing dangerous levels of industrial chemicals. Dr. Alan Weiss, Eliza's supervisor, was brought in for further questioning. Under pressure, he admitted to altering water quality reports to avoid costly remediation processes, but he insisted he knew nothing about Eliza's whereabouts. "She never confronted me directly," he said. "If she suspected something, she kept it to herself." 3 weeks after her disappearance, Eliza Chambers walked into the Oakwood Police Department on her own. She was thin, exhausted, but unharmed. She refused to say where she had been or why she had disappeared. She would only speak to Detective Mercer, and only after her mother had been called. When they were finally alone, Eliza placed a small flash drive on the table. "Everything's on here," she said quietly. "All the evidence, all the connections. It goes higher than Weiss, much higher." She wouldn't elaborate further that day or the next. When pressed about the video on her phone, she looked genuinely confused. What video? The investigation into the water contamination expanded, eventually implicating several local officials and executives from a manufacturing plant upstream. Dr. Weiss was arrested and charged with falsifying public records and endangering public health. Edward Gaines disappeared again 2 days after Eliza's return. His home was found empty, his bank accounts closed. The phone, the one found in the park, was examined again. Forensic analysis revealed that the video had been created using sophisticated editing software. The whispered words, the moving shadow, all fabricated, but by whom and why remained unclear. Eliza eventually moved back to Michigan. She declined all interview requests and refused to discuss the missing 21 days with anyone, even Detective Mercer. The only statement she ever made publicly was brief. "Sometimes you have to disappear to bring the truth to light." The case technically closed when Eliza returned safely, but Detective Mercer kept a copy of the files in her desk drawer. Sometimes, late at night, she would watch the video again, the whispered words, the shifting shadow, and she would wonder about what Eliza might have meant by beneath. Because beneath the surface of every solved case, there are currents that remain hidden, truths that never quite rise to the light. And sometimes, a phone that rings just once is trying to tell you something important, even when it has no SIM card at all. Crime 4, the front door was locked from the inside, all windows latched, nothing broken, but the carpet in the hallway squished beneath the first responder's boot. It was soaked, cold, pink-tinged, and still fresh. The trail led to the guest room, where a single line was written across the mirror in red lipstick, "Don't trust her." Officer Daniel Mercer stood in the doorway of Alina Blackwood's modest 2-bedroom home in Pinewood, Massachusetts, a quiet suburb where most residents left their doors unlocked. It was February 18, 2019, an unusually warm Monday for winter. The call had come in at 5:47 p.m. from Alina's sister, Abigail, who hadn't heard from her in 3 days. Alina was 42, divorced, employed as an administrative assistant at the local community college for the past 11 years. She was known for her reliability. She had never missed a day of work without calling in. She hadn't shown up that morning. She hadn't called. Her car was still in the driveway. "We spoke every single night," Abigail told Officer Mercer, her voice trembling slightly as she stood on the front porch, refusing to re-enter the house. "Every night at 8:30 for 20 minutes. It was our ritual after our mother passed away last year. When she didn't call Friday night, I thought maybe she was tired. By Sunday, I knew something was wrong." The house was meticulously clean except for that damp hallway carpet. No signs of struggle, no blood visible anywhere else. Alina's bed was made with hospital corners, a habit from childhood. Her kitchen contained a half-empty mug of tea on the counter, cold and with a thin film on top. The refrigerator held fresh groceries. Her phone was on her nightstand, fully charged. The medical examiner estimated that the water in the carpet had been there for 48 to 72 hours. Long enough to have started developing that distinctive odor of dampness that clings to the nostrils. But there was something else beneath that smell, something metallic, something familiar to experienced officers like Mercer. Detective Sarah Linden took over the case on Tuesday morning. She spent hours walking through Alina's house, absorbing the details of her life. Family photos adorned the walls, Alina with her sister, with their parents at the beach at graduations. Alina's daily planner sat open on her desk, with perfectly uniform handwriting documenting appointments, bills due, birthdays. The last entry was for Friday, dinner with T7:00 p.m. Who was T? Alina's coworkers described her as pleasant but private. She'd been more withdrawn in recent months since her mother's passing, but dedicated to her work. She managed the registration office with quiet efficiency. Students liked her because she remembered their names. "She started wearing makeup again about 2 months ago," said Diane, her closest work friend. "I noticed because she'd stopped wearing any after her divorce 3 years back. I asked if she was seeing someone, but she just smiled and changed the subject." The sister, Abigail, couldn't identify who T might be. She didn't mention dating anyone. After what happened with Richard, her ex, she said she was done with relationships. Richard Blackwood had been questioned immediately. He lived 2 towns over, had a solid alibi for the weekend, a fishing trip with friends, confirmed by multiple witnesses, and seemed genuinely shocked at Alina's disappearance. The divorce had been amicable by all accounts. He still sent her birthday cards. Detective Linden returned to the strange message on the mirror, "Don't trust her." The handwriting didn't match Alina's precise script from her planner. The lipstick was a bright red shade that none of Alina's friends or family recognized her ever wearing. In fact, no red lipstick was found among her belongings. The damp carpet remained the most disturbing element. The moisture had penetrated deep into the padding beneath. Luminol testing showed faint traces of blood mixed with the water, but not enough to indicate a fatal injury. It was as if someone had meticulously cleaned up a mess, diluting whatever had spilled there. On Wednesday, Detective Linden received the results from Alina's phone records. In the weeks prior to her disappearance, she had exchanged numerous texts with a number registered to a Thomas Carver. The messages were friendly, increasingly intimate. They had indeed been dating for about 6 weeks. Carver was 45, a real estate agent who worked primarily in the neighboring county. When questioned, he confirmed having dinner plans with Alina that Friday, but claimed she had canceled via text around 6 p.m. She said she wasn't feeling well, he explained, showing Detective Lyndon the message on his phone. I offered to bring soup, but she said she just needed to sleep. I was disappointed, but didn't think much of it. The text came from Alina's phone, but when compared to her typical writing style, subtle differences emerged. Alina never used abbreviations in her messages. This cancellation text contained PLS instead of please and ended without her usual period. Thomas Carver had no criminal record. His colleagues described him as charming, ambitious, perhaps too smooth at times. He had been divorced twice. Both ex-wives had moved out of state. By Friday, 1 week after Alina was last seen, the forensic team had found microscopic blood spatter on the ceiling of the hallway, easily missed during initial examination. Blood that matched Alina's type. The bathroom drains showed traces of bleach. The guest room, where the mirror message was found, had been recently and thoroughly cleaned. The search expanded to wooded areas surrounding Pinewood. Volunteers combed through underbrush. Police divers checked the local lake. Nothing. Then came the call from a gas station attendant 30 miles north. He recognized Alina's photo from the news. She came in late Friday night, bought a coffee and a prepaid phone, seemed nervous, kept looking over her shoulder. She wasn't alone. Security footage confirmed it was Alina, wearing clothes not found in her home, a dark hoodie, jeans, sneakers. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m. Friday. She was accompanied by a woman with shoulder-length blonde hair who kept her face turned away from cameras. They left in a dark sedan with out-of-state plates, too blurry to identify. Who was this woman? Why would Alina leave with her? Where was she now? The case took another turn when Detective Lyndon received an anonymous email containing a video file. The footage showed Alina, clearly under duress, staring into a camera. "My name is Alina Blackwood," she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "If you're watching this, I need you to know that Thomas isn't who he says he is. He found me because of her. She led him to me. I thought I was safe here." The video ended abruptly. Tech specialists traced the email to a library computer in Vermont, used 3 days earlier. When police returned to question Thomas Carver again, his apartment was empty. Neighbors said he had left suddenly, mentioning a family emergency. His real estate office had received a resignation email. His phone was disconnected. Investigation into Carver's background revealed disturbing inconsistencies. Thomas Carver had only existed on paper for 7 years. Before that, nothing. His previous marriages couldn't be verified. One ex-wife, supposedly living in Oregon, couldn't be located at all. Alina's sister provided an additional piece of the puzzle. Alina was adopted. She'd hired a private investigator last year to find her birth family. She was so excited when she found a half-sister living just a few hours away. They met for the first time around Christmas. Police found the investigator, who confirmed that Alina had located a maternal half-sister named Teresa Campbell. The investigator had concerns about Campbell's interest in Alina, describing it as unusually intense, but Alina had been eager to develop the relationship. Teresa Campbell's driver's license photo showed a woman with shoulder-length blonde hair. As weeks passed, the investigation uncovered a pattern across 3 states. Women disappearing after reconnecting with long-lost relatives, mysterious spouses entering their lives shortly after, bank accounts emptied. 5 cases with striking similarities. In each instance, a woman who had been adopted as an infant had located birth family, only to vanish months later. 8 months after Alina disappeared, a handwritten postcard arrived at the Pinewood Police Department, addressed to Detective Linden. It bore no return address, postmarked from Seattle. The water rises slowly, but it never stops. She wasn't the first sister, and I won't be the last. We all trust too easily when we're looking for home. The carpet in Alina Blackwood's hallway eventually dried. The house was sold. Her case file remains open, one of many connected to what the FBI now calls the Family Finder case, a suspected team of con artists targeting adoptees searching for their birth families. Alina's body has never been found. Thomas Carver and Teresa Campbell remain at large, possibly operating under new names, forming new connections, exploiting the universal human desire to belong. The last confirmed sighting of a woman matching Teresa's description was at a genetic genealogy convention in Portland, collecting brochures, smiling warmly at strangers searching for their roots, waiting for someone to trust her. Crime 5 laid out in a perfect arc on the table. The teeth looked clinical at first, like something from a dental office. But under closer inspection, every single one was identical. Same shape, same wear patterns, no roots, too perfect to be real, too many to belong to one person. And then they realized none of them matched the victim. Detective Elaine Mercer had been with the Boulder County Sheriff's Department for 19 years. She'd seen her share of unusual cases, but nothing quite like this. The victim, Diane Lawton, 42, had been discovered in her modest ranch-style home on Pinewood Drive, 20 minutes outside Boulder, Colorado. She'd lived there alone for the past 8 years since her divorce. Diane was a dental hygienist at Aspen Ridge Family Dentistry, well liked by her colleagues and patients. Her routine was predictable. Worked Monday through Thursday, yoga on Friday mornings, dinner with her sister Marion every Sunday. She kept a small garden in her backyard, primarily herbs and flowers. Neighbors described her as private but friendly, the kind of person who would wave from her driveway but rarely initiated conversation. Her body was found on a Tuesday evening when Marion came by, concerned after Diane had missed both her Sunday dinner and 2 days of work without calling, something entirely out of character. The front door had been unlocked. Inside, the living room was undisturbed. So was the kitchen, the hallway, and the guest bedroom. It was in her bedroom where Marion found her sister. Diane lay on her back, fully clothed in what appeared to be her typical work attire, blue scrubs and comfortable shoes. No visible trauma or blood. Her face was peaceful, almost as if she were sleeping. The medical examiner would later determine she'd been dead for approximately 72 hours, with the cause of death being an overdose of propofol, an anesthetic used in medical procedures, particularly in dentistry. Something Diane would have had access to at work, but that she had no reason to bring home. What stood out immediately, Detective Mercer later recounted, was the arrangement on her dresser. 32 teeth, the number in a full adult human mouth, laid out with mathematical precision in a curved formation. The same kind of formation a dental hygienist would document on a patient's chart. Porcelain veneers, not real teeth, which was the first relief to the investigators. Forensic odontologist Dr. Raymond Simmons confirmed they were all identical machine-fabricated veneers and not a match to any missing person case in their database. These are high-quality products, Dr. Simmons had said, examining them under special lighting. Premium-grade dental veneers, the kind that cost about $1,500 each. You're looking at close to $50,000 worth of dental work arranged on that dresser. Marion had no explanation for the teeth. Diane never brought work home, she insisted during her second interview with Detective Mercer. and she certainly wouldn't have access to this kind of thing. She cleaned teeth, she didn't make veneers. A quiet search of Aspen Ridge family dentistry revealed no missing inventory of dental veneers. Dr. Helen Wright, the practice owner, was visibly shaken. Veneers like this would be custom ordered for specific patients, she explained. We don't keep stock like this, and Diane, she was the most ethical person I knew. Detective Mercer spent hours reviewing Diane's life. Phone records showed regular calls to her sister, occasional exchanges with colleagues, and weekly conversations with her elderly mother in Arizona. Her bank accounts were modest but stable. No unusual withdrawals or deposits, no suspicious emails. Her computer contained mostly Netflix history, recipes, and yoga tutorials. Her car's GPS history showed a routine pattern: home to work, work to home, with occasional stops at grocery stores, her yoga studio, and her sister's house. No unusual destinations in the weeks before her death. 3 days into the investigation, something changed. Marion called Detective Mercer at 2:17 a.m., her voice trembling. I remembered something, she said. Last month, Diane mentioned a patient who kept asking her out. She always refused. She said he gave her a strange feeling. This patient, according to Marion, had become increasingly persistent. Diane had mentioned his name just once, Andrew Kavanaugh. He'd scheduled appointments frequently, often requesting Diane specifically. After his 6th visit in 2 months, Diane had spoken to Dr. Wright about her discomfort. Detective Mercer pulled Kavanaugh's patient file the next morning. He was 45, an accountant who had moved to Boulder from Seattle 11 months earlier. His dental work was extensive, including several veneers. Kavanaugh's apartment was empty when officers arrived with a warrant. Neighbors said he'd left 3 days ago, rolling a large suitcase behind him. His apartment was impeccably clean, almost sterile. No personal photos, minimal furniture, white walls. The kitchen contained exactly 4 plates, 4 bowls, 4 sets of cutlery, everything in precise alignment. In the bathroom medicine cabinet, officers found an empty prescription bottle for clonazepam, a sedative often prescribed for anxiety. The prescription was dated 6 months earlier, but the label had been partially scratched off, obscuring the prescribing doctor's information. Detective Mercer stood in Kavanaugh's spotless living room, trying to piece together the connection. How had Diane Lawton, a dental hygienist with a predictable life, crossed paths with this man so fatally? The breakthrough came from Diane's sister again. Searching through Diane's house a second time, Marion discovered a small notebook tucked beneath the mattress. Inside were brief, cryptic entries. See again today, 3rd time this month. Asked about my collection. How could he know? Told Dr. W about uncomfortable situation. She's moving his future appointments to Jason. Saw him in the parking lot after hours, just sitting there. Called security, but he was gone when they came. Found a package on my doorstep, no label, not opening it. The last entry, dated the day before her estimated time of death, contained just 5 words. He knows about the others. What others? What collection? Detective Mercer returned to Diane's house, this time with a forensic team instructed to look beyond the obvious. In the crawl space above the garage, accessible only through a small hatch in the ceiling, they found them 17 small boxes, each containing a single tooth. Real human teeth, each labeled with a date going back 12 years. DNA testing would eventually match these teeth to 17 different missing persons cases across Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska. cases that had gone cold, people who had disappeared without a trace, all after dental procedures. Andrew Kavanaugh's real name, they would discover, was not Kavanaugh at all. His fingerprints matched those of Samuel Whitfield, a former dental lab technician who had worked at facilities connected to each of the 17 victims. He had been questioned twice in relation to disappearances but never charged. And Diane, how had she acquired these macabre trophies? The investigation revealed a pattern of temporary employment at various dental practices across 3 states, always departing shortly after a patient went missing, always taking a small souvenir. But what of the 32 perfect veneers arranged on her dresser? Forensic analysis determined they were custom made for a single patient, a patient whose records showed they had been fitted by a dentist in Seattle. A dentist who had employed both Diane Lawton and Samuel Kavanaugh Whitfield 7 years earlier. A dentist who had himself disappeared 4 years ago. When they finally tracked down Kavanaugh/Whitfield 3 months later in a small town in northern Mexico, he offered only one enigmatic statement. She was taking them. I was collecting them. It was only a matter of time before we found each other. The case file remains open. The 17 identified victims have given closure to some families, but questions linger about how many others might be connected, about what drove these 2 individuals to their obsessions, about whether Diane was predator or prey in her final moments, and about those perfect teeth, arranged with such precision on the dresser of a woman who had kept her own dark collection hidden for years. Detective Mercer still thinks about it on sleepless nights, about the teeth without roots, about the secrets beneath ordinary surfaces, about how some patterns only become visible when it's already too late to stop them. Crime 6, neighbors said it started suddenly, low growls, then frantic scratching. The dog refused to leave the corner of the living room, barking at the drywall like it could see through it. When police opened the wall, they expected pipes or rodents. Instead, they pulled out a Polaroid. It was old, faded, and showed someone standing right where the dog had been barking. Sarah Morgan never considered herself superstitious. At 42, she'd become accustomed to the practical rhythms of small-town life in Millfield, Connecticut. She kept her lawn trimmed, paid her taxes on time, and exchanged pleasantries with neighbors during her morning walks with Rusty, her 4-year-old golden retriever. She'd purchased the modest 2-bedroom Craftsman on Oakwood Drive 3 months earlier, her first home after finalizing her divorce from Robert, her husband of 15 years. The house had been built in 1983, unremarkable except for its affordability and the large oak trees that sheltered the backyard. The previous owners, an elderly couple named the Hansons, had moved to Florida after 35 years in the home. Sarah had only met them once during the final walkthrough. Mrs. Hanson had squeezed her hand and whispered, "Houses remember things, dear," before handing over the keys. Sarah had smiled politely, attributing the comment to an old woman's sentimentality. October brought crisp air and falling leaves to Millfield. Sarah settled into a comfortable routine, working remotely as an insurance claims adjuster during the day and spending evenings refinishing furniture she'd purchased at local estate sales. Rusty, always even-tempered and gentle, had adjusted well to their new home, claiming a spot by the bay window in the living room as his preferred napping location. On October 17th, Sarah woke to Rusty whimpering downstairs. The digital clock beside her bed read 3:14 a.m. She listened, hoping he would settle, but the whimpering escalated to urgent barking. Concerned that he needed to go outside, Sarah slipped on her robe and descended the stairs. She found Rusty in the living room, standing rigidly in the corner near the entryway, his attention fixed on the wall. His hackles were raised, his body tense. "What is it, boy?" Sarah switched on the lamp. Rusty didn't acknowledge her, continuing to stare at the seemingly ordinary wall. Sarah checked for spiders or shadows that might have triggered his alarm, but found nothing unusual. "Come on, Rusty, let's go back to bed." She tugged gently at his collar, but Rusty resisted, emitting a low growl that Sarah had never heard from him before. Eventually, she coaxed him upstairs, but twice more that night, she found him back at the same spot, barking at the wall. By morning, Rusty had calmed, but throughout the day, Sarah noticed him returning to the corner, sniffing intensely at a particular section of the baseboard. That evening, her next-door neighbor Carol Winters stopped by with a plate of brownies, a belated welcome gift. "I hope Rusty isn't keeping you up," Sarah mentioned casually. "He's been acting strange, barking at the wall." Carol's smile faltered slightly. "Dogs sense things, you know. The Hansons had a dog too, a little terrier that used to do the same thing, drove old Richard crazy." She laughed, but there was an undercurrent of something in her voice that Sarah couldn't quite identify. Over the next week, Rusty's behavior intensified. He scratched at the wall until his paws bled, forcing Sarah to bandage them. She tried moving furniture in front of the area, but Rusty would push it aside or bark from a distance. On October 25th, she called a veterinarian who suggested anxiety medication and recommended checking for rodents or electrical issues that might be bothering the dog. An exterminator found no evidence of pests, and an electrician detected no abnormal wiring. Still, Rusty persisted, now refusing to eat unless Sarah hand-fed him away from the living room. On October 29th, after a particularly sleepless night of Rusty's barking, Sarah called in sick to work. Determined to solve the mystery, she examined the wall more carefully. The house had been renovated multiple times over its lifetime, and as she ran her fingers along the baseboard, she noticed a slight variation in the texture of the drywall, a rectangular section about 2 feet wide that seemed newer than the surrounding area. Sarah remembered a hammer and pry bar among the tools left in the garage. Curiosity overcoming her better judgment, she began to remove the baseboard. Rusty watched, his tail wagging for the first time in days. When she tapped on the wall, it sounded hollow. Using the pry bar, she carefully made a small hole in the drywall. Rusty began barking excitedly. Expanding the hole, Sarah shone her phone's flashlight inside. At first, she saw only dust and insulation. Then something reflective caught the light, a small plastic packet wedged between studs. Using the pry bar, she carefully extracted it. Inside was a Polaroid photograph, partially deteriorated but still recognizable. It showed a young woman with feathered hair, wearing clothing from the late 1970s or early 1980s, standing exactly where Sarah now stood. The woman was smiling, but her eyes conveyed something else entirely, fear, perhaps, or resignation. On the back, written in faded blue ink, Melissa, 1981. Sarah felt a chill despite the warm autumn sun streaming through the windows. Rusty had gone quiet, watching her with intelligent eyes that seemed to say, "I told you so." That afternoon, Sarah walked to the local library with the photograph tucked in her purse. The librarian, a longtime Millfield resident named Dorothy, helped her access archives of the local newspaper. Sarah wasn't sure what she was looking for until she found it, a small article dated July 3, 1981. Local woman still missing. Police seek information on disappearance of Melissa Chambers, 23. According to the article, Melissa had vanished without a trace after leaving her waitressing job at the Bluebird Diner. Her car was found parked at her apartment, but she never made it inside. Friends described her as reliable and punctual, making her disappearance all the more concerning. The article mentioned that before her disappearance, Melissa had mentioned a new boyfriend, but had been secretive about his identity. Sarah returned home unsettled, the photograph feeling heavier in her purse. She called Carol, asking if she remembered anything about a missing woman named Melissa from the early 1980s. "Before my time, dear," Carol replied, "but you might want to talk to Frank Simmons down at the hardware store. He's been here forever, knows all the old stories." The following day, Sarah visited Millfield Hardware. Frank Simmons, a soft-spoken man in his 70s, recognized the name immediately. "Melissa Chambers, pretty girl, terrible thing." He lowered his voice. "You know who built your house, don't you? Thomas Hanson, Richard's brother. He was a contractor, built several houses in the neighborhood, including yours, back in '83. "The previous owners were named Hanson," Sarah said slowly. Frank nodded. "Richard and Elaine moved in after Thomas died, heart attack in '89. Folks always thought Thomas knew something about that missing girl. He dated her briefly, according to rumors, but nothing was ever proven and the case went cold." Sarah felt nauseated. Did they ever find her? Frank shook his head. Some said she just ran off to California. Others had darker theories. Either way, she was never heard from again. That evening, Sarah called the Millfield Police Department. Officer Daniels arrived an hour later, a young man who initially seemed skeptical of her story. But when she showed him the photograph and the hole in the wall, his demeanor changed. "I'll need to take this photograph as evidence," he said, "and we'll need to conduct a more thorough search of this area." The next morning, a team of officers arrived with specialized equipment. They expanded the hole Sarah had made and then began scanning other sections of the wall. By afternoon, they had removed most of the drywall in the corner where Rusty had been barking. "Ma'am," Officer Daniels called to Sarah, who had been watching from the kitchen. "We've found something else." Behind the wall, tucked between studs and wrapped in plastic, was a small leather purse. Inside were a wallet containing Melissa Chambers' driver's license, $19 in cash, and a small notebook. The final entry, dated June 28, 1981, read, "Meeting T again tonight. He wants to show me the house he's building. Says someday we could live there together." The investigation that followed reopened wounds in Millfield that had scarred over decades earlier. Ground-penetrating radar revealed no human remains on the property, but further exploration of the house uncovered more of Melissa's belongings hidden in walls and under floorboards, jewelry, a shoe, and most disturbingly, strands of hair consistent with samples provided by Melissa's now elderly mother, who still lived just 30 miles away in Hartford. Thomas Hanson had died long ago, taking any confessions with him to the grave. His brother Richard, now suffering from advanced dementia in a Florida nursing home, could provide no insights. The case remained technically unsolved, though few in Millfield doubted who was responsible. Sarah never returned to live in the house on Oakwood Drive. She and Rusty moved into an apartment while the investigation continued, eventually settling in a different town altogether. The house stood empty for months, a silent memorial to a decades-old crime finally brought to light. As for Rusty, he never again displayed the strange behavior that had led to the discovery. Sarah often wondered what exactly he had sensed behind that wall, a scent undetectable to humans, or perhaps something else entirely. Houses remember things, Mrs. Hanson had said. Perhaps, Sarah reflected, they weren't the only ones. Crime 7. She was found wrapped in a soft green blanket at the church steps, clean, healthy, quiet. There was no note, no name, no report of a missing child. But when social services ran her fingerprints, something impossible came back, a match to a woman declared deceased over 20 years ago. Oak Ridge, Nebraska had never known much tragedy. A town of 7,000 people nestled between cornfields and modest neighborhoods, its residents took pride in knowing one another. The first Lutheran church stood on Maple Avenue since 1937, a brick sanctuary with broad wooden doors that opened every Sunday to welcome the faithful. Pastor Jim Whitaker had served there for 15 years, arriving before dawn each morning to unlock those doors. On October 4th, 2019, the autumn air carried the first bite of winter as Pastor Jim approached the church steps at 5:43 a.m. The security light illuminated something unusual at the entrance, a small bundle of green fabric. As he drew closer, his breath caught. Nestled in the folds of a fleece blanket lay an infant, perhaps 3 months old, with dark curls framing a peaceful, sleeping face. "I thought she was a doll at first," Pastor Jim would later tell Detective Lauren Nichols. "She was so still, so perfect. Then she opened her eyes and looked at me like she'd been waiting." The child showed no signs of neglect, clean, well-fed, dressed in a white onesie without tags or identifying marks. The green blanket bore no monograms, no store labels, nothing to trace, nothing to tell her story. The local police arrived within minutes, followed by paramedics who confirmed the baby girl was in excellent health. They estimated her age at 12 to 14 weeks. Sergeant Carl Bowen, a 30-year veteran of the Oak Ridge Police Department, took initial charge of the case. "In 40 years of police work, I've seen 3 abandoned babies," he noted in his first report. "Never one this well cared for. Someone loved this child enough to keep her healthy, but not enough to keep her close." Social services placed the infant, temporarily named Jane, with the Harmons, a local foster family who had cared for 17 children over the years. Deborah Harmon, a former pediatric nurse, noticed something remarkable about the baby. She never cried, not once. She would stare at you with these knowing eyes, like she understood everything happening around her. Standard procedure dictated taking the infant's fingerprints for the national database, primarily to match against parents who might report her missing. Technician Marcus Reeves processed them on October 5th, expecting no results. 3 days later, his computer signaled a match. "I assumed it was a system error," Reeves explained later. The database showed a 98.7% match to fingerprints taken in 1993 from a woman named Eliza Kendall. Eliza Kendall had been 23 when she disappeared from her apartment in Lincoln, Nebraska, 60 miles from Oak Ridge. After a 3-month search, investigators found her car submerged in Carter Lake. Blood matching her type stained the driver's seat. The lake was dragged, but no body was recovered. In 1994, she was legally declared deceased. Detective Lauren Nichols, 34, with a reputation for solving cold cases, was assigned to investigate the impossible fingerprint match. Dark-haired and methodical, she had grown up in Oak Ridge before returning after 10 years with the Omaha Police Department. "Fingerprints don't lie," she told Sergeant Bowen in their first meeting about the case. "But they also don't regenerate across generations. We're missing something fundamental here." The first logical step was to look into Eliza Kendall's life. Nichols drove to Lincoln on October 10th, carrying a folder with the sparse information available. Eliza had worked as a librarian at the University of Nebraska. She lived alone, had few close friends, and maintained minimal contact with her family in Minnesota. Her disappearance had generated some local media coverage. then faded into the background of unsolved cases. Nichols located Martin Weber, the detective who had originally investigated Eliza's disappearance. Now retired, he invited her into a small house filled with fishing trophies and framed photographs of grandchildren. "I never believed we had the full story with Eliza," Weber said, his weathered hands sorting through a box of personal files he'd kept. No suicide note, no signs of depression, and something always bothered me about her apartment. "What was that?" Nichols asked. "It was too clean, not just tidy, it looked staged, books arranged too perfectly. Nothing personal except for one photo of her parents. No journals, no letters, minimal clothing. It felt like someone had removed anything that might tell us who she really was." Nichols visited the university library next, where the current head librarian, Patricia Dawson, had been a junior employee during Eliza's time. "Eliza was contained," Patricia said, choosing her words carefully. "Brilliant with cataloging systems, but distant with people. Always wore long sleeves, even in summer. I remember thinking it strange." "Did she have any regular visitors? Anyone who seemed particularly close to her?" Patricia hesitated. There was a man who would meet her after work sometimes. Tall, distinguished. I assumed he was a professor, but I never saw him in faculty meetings. "Did you ever get his name?" "No, but about 2 months before she disappeared, they had an argument outside the library. I couldn't hear what they said, but Eliza was trembling afterward. She requested a week off the next day." Nichols drove back to Oak Ridge with more questions than answers. Who was the distinguished man? Why would Eliza's fingerprints match an infant born 2 decades after her presumed death? And why leave the baby at a church in Oak Ridge, of all places? On October 15th, Nichols received the results of the baby's DNA test. No matches in the criminal database, but the technician noted something unusual in the genetic markers. "These patterns are consistent with certain cases of genetic manipulation," the report stated. Specifically, techniques developed for medical research in the early 2000s. Nichols stared at the report for a long time before calling her supervisor. That same evening, Deborah Harmon noticed something unusual while bathing baby Jane. A small, almost invisible scar behind her left ear, the kind of mark left by microsurgery. She photographed it and sent it to Nichols immediately. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Nichols discovered that Eliza Kendall had been part of a university study on memory formation in the semester before her disappearance. The lead researcher, Dr. Samuel Grayson, had left academia suddenly in 1994 to work for a private research facility called Meridian Biosciences. Meridian no longer existed, at least not under that name. It had been acquired by a larger corporation in 2005, its records supposedly destroyed in a storage facility fire in 2009. But Nichols managed to locate a former administrative assistant, Heather Collins, who had worked there from 1993 to 1996. Meridian wasn't what it appeared to be, Heather said when they met at a quiet coffee shop in Omaha. The official research was just a front. Dr. Grayson had theories about consciousness transference, genetic memory, ideas the scientific community considered fringe at best. And Eliza was involved. She wasn't just a subject, she was a willing participant. I processed her employment paperwork myself in late 1993. She faked her disappearance to work at the facility full-time, off the grid. Nichols felt a chill that had nothing to do with the autumn weather. Do you know what happened to her? Heather looked down at her untouched coffee. There was an incident in early 1994. I don't know the details, but afterward Grayson became obsessed with continuing his work elsewhere, somewhere without oversight. He left, taking several researchers and subjects with him, including Eliza. On October 21st, while Nichols pursued leads on Dr. Grayson's current whereabouts, Pastor Jim made a surprising discovery while organizing donations for the church's fall festival. Among a box of children's books was a worn copy of Goodnight Moon with an inscription on the first page, "For Jane, who carries the past forward, may you find the answers we couldn't. E.K." The book had been donated anonymously 2 days before the baby appeared. Nichols ordered surveillance footage from businesses surrounding the church. A convenience store camera across the street had captured a gray sedan stopping briefly near the church at 2:17 a.m. on October 4th. The driver remained inside while a passenger, a woman in a hooded coat, carried a bundle to the church steps before quickly returning to the vehicle. The image quality was too poor to identify faces or the license plate, but it was the first tangible evidence of who had left baby Jane. On October 23rd, Deborah Harmon called Nichols in a panic. Someone was watching the house last night. A man in a black car parked across the street for hours. When my husband went out to check, he drove away. Nichols arranged for police protection for the Harmon home and expedited the processing of Eliza Kendall's known fingerprints from the original case file. The comparison confirmed what seemed impossible. The infant's right index, middle, and ring fingerprints were identical to Eliza's, while the others showed slight variations. "It's not possible through natural means," the fingerprint analyst told her. "But if someone had the technology to clone specific skin tissue." The investigation reached a breaking point on October 29th when Dr. Michael Foster, a geneticist consulting on the case, provided Nichols with a disturbing analysis. The baby's DNA shows signs of integrated memory RNA sequences, a theoretical procedure mentioned in some of Grayson's published papers before he went off-grid. He believed memories could be encoded genetically and passed to cloned tissue. It sounds like science fiction, but the markers are there. That night, Nichols received an unmarked envelope at the police station. Inside was a USB drive containing a single video file. The recording showed a woman in her 50s with familiar dark curls, now streaked with gray. "My name is Eliza Kendall," she began, her voice steady despite the visible tremor in her hands. "The child I've left at First Lutheran is not my daughter in the conventional sense. She is me, or part of me. What Grayson did to us cannot be undone, but it can end with her. They're coming for me now. I won't let them take her too." The video ended abruptly. Digital forensics determined it had been recorded just 3 days before baby Jane was found. On November 2nd, a hiker discovered a woman's body in the wooded area outside Oak Ridge. Identification confirmed it was Eliza Kendall, age 52. Cause of death, a self-administered overdose of sleeping medication. In her pocket was a photograph of baby Jane taken at the Harmon home, a picture that had never been released to the public. The man in the black car was never identified. Meridian Biosciences records remained largely unrecoverable. Dr. Samuel Grayson was rumored to have continued his research overseas, but international inquiries led nowhere. Baby Jane remained with the Harmons, who later adopted her when no biological relatives came forward. The fingerprints that had triggered the investigation were sealed by court order. Detective Nichols visits sometimes. She watches Jane, now legally named Sarah Harmon, growing into a thoughtful 4-year-old with knowing eyes and an unexplainable affinity for library books. Sarah occasionally says things that make Nichols pause, describes places she couldn't possibly have seen. The green blanket remains in evidence storage. The book Goodnight Moon sits on Sarah's bedside table. And sometimes, when the autumn air carries the first bite of winter, Detective Nichols finds herself driving past First Lutheran, wondering about the woman who lived 2 lives and the child who may be carrying the memories of both. In Oak Ridge, Nebraska, people have largely forgotten the mystery of the abandoned baby. But in the quiet moments before sleep, Detective Nichols still reviews her notes, still searches for Dr. Grayson, still wonders what other secrets might be encoded in Sarah's DNA, waiting to emerge as she grows. Some nights she drives past the Harmon house, watching for black cars with unknown drivers, guardians against a threat she can't fully define but feels in her bones is still out there, waiting. The case remains officially open. Crime 8, the house had been inspected, appraised, and cleared. No one had mentioned a basement, but when the new owners moved a shelf in the pantry, they found a trapdoor nailed shut from the outside. It creaked open onto steps soaked in mildew, and walls lined with newspaper clippings about people who had disappeared, all from the same neighborhood. Michael and Sarah Tanner had moved to Oak Ridge, Minnesota in early October 2018. The small town of 8,000 residents appealed to them, a place where they could raise their 2 young children away from the congestion of Minneapolis, where Michael had secured a job as a high school history teacher. Sarah, an architect working remotely, had fallen in love with the Victorian house on Elm Street the moment they pulled into the driveway. Built in 1923, it had character, ornate moldings, original hardwood floors, and a sprawling backyard bordered by tall pines. The previous owner, Gerald Hoffman, had lived there for 47 years. A widower in his 80s who was moving into assisted living, he had maintained the house meticulously, or so they thought. The realtor mentioned he'd been somewhat reclusive after his wife died in 1994, but neighbors spoke of him as quiet, unassuming, the kind of man who always returned your wave but rarely initiated conversation. The Tanners had been in the house for 3 weeks when Sarah decided to reorganize the walk-in pantry. The antique pine shelving unit against the back wall was beautiful but impractical, too deep for standard groceries. She called Michael to help move it, thinking they might repurpose it elsewhere. "It's heavier than it looks," Michael grunted, struggling to shift it. The shelves seemed peculiarly anchored to the floor. When they finally dislodged it, the reason became clear. The unit had been deliberately positioned to conceal a trapdoor in the floor, secured with 3 heavy iron nails hammered from the outside. "This isn't in any of the blueprints," Sarah whispered, her architectural training immediately registering the anomaly. The inspection report had listed no basement, just a small crawlspace accessed from outside. Michael worked the nails loose with a hammer's claw, his curiosity overriding caution. The trapdoor lifted with a long, pained groan. Musty air rushed upward, carrying decades of trapped humidity and something else, a faint, unidentifiable odor that made Sarah's stomach tighten. Wooden steps descended into darkness. Michael shone his phone's flashlight down, revealing a basement roughly the size of their living room. The beam caught something on the walls, paper, hundreds of pieces of yellowing paper. "Stay here with the kids," Michael said. "I'll check it out." The steps creaked under his weight. Down in the basement, the weak light from his phone revealed walls meticulously covered with newspaper clippings. Some were brittle with age, others more recent. All of them shared a theme: missing persons. Men, women, a few teenagers, all reported missing from Oak Ridge or neighboring towns within a 30-mile radius. Michael's breathing quickened as he realized the clippings spanned decades. The oldest from 1972, the most recent from just 4 months ago, June 2018, shortly before Hoffman had put the house on the market. A 23-year-old woman named Eliza Pearson, last seen leaving her night shift at the local hospital. In the center of the room stood a single wooden chair and a small table. On the table lay a leather-bound journal. Michael picked it up with trembling hands, his phone light revealing handwritten entries dating back to the early 1970s. "Michael," Sarah called from above. "What's down there? Should I call someone?" I think we need to call the police," he replied, his voice hollow. Detective Laura Mercer arrived 40 minutes later. A 20-year veteran of the Oak Ridge Police Department, she had investigated her share of domestic disturbances and petty thefts, but nothing like this. As she descended the stairs, her flashlight beamed stronger than Michael's phone. The full scale of the wall documentation became apparent. 46 people, she murmured, counting the clippings. Some of these cases I remember, some were before my time. She carefully bagged the journal, treating it as evidence. The Tanners stayed with neighbors that night as forensic technicians combed through the basement. By morning, the story had spread through Oak Ridge. Gerald Hoffman, the quiet old man who always returned your wave, had been tracking disappearances for decades. But why? The journal provided the first clues. It contained not just newspaper information, but personal observations, times, locations, physical descriptions, routines. Some entries included details never released to the public. Most disturbing were the small locks of hair taped to certain pages, each labeled with a name and date. Hoffman could not be questioned. He had died of a stroke 2 weeks after moving into Shady Pines assisted living, just 8 days after the Tanners closed on the house. Detective Mercer obtained a warrant to search Hoffman's room at Shady Pines. In a box beneath his bed, they found more journals going back to 1965. The earliest entries described his wife, Martha, in unsettling detail, her habits, her conversations, her movements. He had stalked her before they married. "This doesn't make sense," Detective Mercer confided to her partner. Some of these disappearances happened when Hoffman was verified to be out of state visiting his sister in Arizona. He couldn't have abducted all these people himself. The investigation expanded. Ground-penetrating radar scanned the Tanners' yard and the wooded area behind it. No bodies were found. Hoffman's DNA was compared against unidentified samples from crime scenes across the state. No matches. Then came the breakthrough. Among Hoffman's possessions at Shady Pines was a photo album. Most pictures showed Martha through various stages of their marriage, but tucked in the back were 7 photographs of men Hoffman's age, one labeled The Collectors, 1962. Hoffman stood among them, all wearing identical lapel pins shaped like small keys. 4 of the men in the photo were still alive. When questioned, they claimed the group was just a social club from their college days at the University of Minnesota. They hadn't met in decades. All seemed genuinely shocked by the investigation. But one of them, Richard Davenport, now a retired dentist living in Duluth, killed himself the night after police questioning. The note he left behind said only, "I couldn't stop him, I'm sorry." By December, the investigation had stalled. No bodies had been found. No definitive evidence linked Hoffman or the other men to actual crimes. The journal entries, while disturbing, weren't confessions. They read more like observations. The Tanners had the basement sealed up and the house blessed by a local priest. They considered moving but decided against it. "This house isn't haunted by ghosts," Michael told Sarah. "It's haunted by questions." Those questions haunted Detective Mercer too. She kept returning to one detail: small marks found behind the basement walls during forensic examination, tiny symbols scratched into the foundation, distinctive patterns that matched symbols found in Hoffman's journals. In March 2019, she received a call from Portland, Oregon. A detective there had a cold case from 1985, a missing 20-year-old woman whose boyfriend had been their prime suspect. The boyfriend had an alibi. He was in Minnesota visiting family the weekend she disappeared. The family name, Hoffman. The Portland detective mentioned something else. A small wooden box found in the missing woman's apartment contained a lapel pin shaped like a key. She'd apparently been dating someone new before her disappearance, someone she'd met while visiting relatives in Minnesota. Detective Mercer reopened the case file. The basement in the Tanner house hadn't been built with the original structure. It had been added sometime in the late 1960s, according to structural analysis. Gerald Hoffman had bought the house in 1971. In April 2019, while examining town records, Mercer discovered something unsettling. From 1962 to 1969, 7 men, including Gerald Hoffman, had purchased homes in a rough circle around Oak Ridge. All houses were renovated shortly after purchase. All 7 men were in that photograph labeled the collectors. 4 of the 7 houses had been sold multiple times since then. 2 had been demolished for new construction. Only Hoffman's house and 1 other remained largely unchanged from that era. The other house belonged to Thomas Whalen, who had died in 2010. His daughter had inherited it but kept it vacant, unwilling to sell for sentimental reasons, though she lived in California. When police obtained a warrant to search the Whalen house, they found a similar concealed basement and walls lined with a different set of missing persons clippings. The case remains open. 46 people are still missing. 7 houses form a circle around Oak Ridge. 2 basements have been found. 5 locations remain uninvestigated or destroyed. The men in the photograph are mostly dead or claim ignorance. The Tanners still live in the house on Elm Street. They've learned to live with the knowledge that their home holds secrets they may never fully understand. Sometimes, late at night, Sarah thinks she hears something from behind the sealed basement door, not movement or voices, but the faint sound of paper rustling, as if someone is still collecting stories, still adding to the walls. Detective Mercer still drives by the house occasionally. She keeps the journal in her office, and sometimes when cases go cold, she opens it and reads, looking for patterns she might have missed. She knows there's more to find. She knows the basements tell only part of the story. And somewhere in Oak Ridge, in houses where no one knows to look, there may be other trapdoors, other basements, other walls papered with faces of the forgotten. Other collections waiting to be discovered. Crime 9, each page was filled with delicate handwriting, neat and orderly. Her final entry detailed a normal day, grocery shopping, feeding the cat, folding laundry. But halfway through a sentence, the pen dragged sharply down the page. Then nothing, just a fingerprint in the margin, smudged in something dark. And on the last page, someone else had written one word: stop. The diary belonged to Catherine Miller, a 34-year-old librarian from the quiet town of Oakwood, Massachusetts. Catherine had moved there 5 years earlier, seeking the peace that small-town life promised after a difficult divorce. Her colleagues at the Oakwood Public Library described her as methodical, kind, and somewhat reserved. She lived alone in a small blue cottage on Willow Lane, where neighbors would occasionally see her tending to her garden or sitting on her porch with a book and her tabby cat, Hemingway. On Tuesday, April 12, 2022, Catherine didn't show up for her morning shift at the library. This was unusual. In 5 years, she had never been late without calling ahead. By noon, her supervisor, Marlene Davis, began to worry. Catherine wasn't answering her cell phone. By 2 p.m., Marlene called Catherine's emergency contact, her younger sister, Eliza, who lived an hour away in Boston. I knew something was wrong immediately, Eliza would later tell investigators. Catherine lived by her routines. They gave her a sense of control after everything that happened with the divorce. Eliza drove to Oakwood that afternoon. When she arrived at the blue cottage, Catherine's car was in the driveway. The mail from the previous day remained in the mailbox. Hemingway was crying at the window, clearly unfed. Using her spare key, Eliza entered the home. Nothing appeared disturbed at first glance. The cottage was immaculate, as Catherine always kept it. The kitchen counter held a half-empty cup of tea, now cold. In the living room, a book lay open on the coffee table, a bookmark placed carefully between pages 147 and 148, but Catherine was nowhere to be found. It was in the bedroom that Eliza discovered the diary, lying open on the neatly made bed. Catherine had kept journals since childhood, a habit their mother had encouraged to help Catherine process her feelings. This particular diary was bound in soft brown leather, a gift from Eliza for Catherine's last birthday. Detective Marcus Reynolds arrived 30 minutes after Eliza called 911. A veteran of the Oakwood Police Department for 15 years, Reynolds had investigated missing persons before, but something about this case immediately struck him as different. The home showed no signs of forced entry, Reynolds noted in his initial report. No struggle, no disarray. It was as if Ms. Miller had simply vanished in the middle of writing in her diary. The final entry was dated April 11th, the evening before Catherine's disappearance. Finished organizing the new shipment of children's books today. Ms. Abernathy from the elementary school came by to discuss the summer reading program. Stopped at Garner's grocery on the way home for cat food and that tea Eliza recommended, made pasta for dinner. While folding laundry, I heard that sound again outside my bedroom window. It's been happening every night this week, just a faint tapping. Probably just a branch, but I should mention it to Mr. Henderson next door since it's keeping me awake. Tomorrow I'll. And then the pen stroke dragging down the page, and that single dark fingerprint. Forensics later confirmed the fingerprint was indeed made with blood, Catherine's blood, but the quantity was minimal, consistent with a small cut. More disturbing was the word "stop" written on the final page. Analysis showed it was not Catherine's handwriting, and the ink was different from what she had used. As Detective Reynolds began investigating Catherine's life, certain details emerged that complicated the seemingly simple narrative of her quiet existence. Catherine's ex-husband, James Miller, had moved to Oakwood 6 months earlier, a fact she had mentioned to only a few close friends. James had taken a job at the local community college, teaching literature, Catherine's own passion. Their divorce wasn't amicable, Eliza explained to Reynolds during a follow-up interview. James had control issues. Catherine never filed charges, but there were incidents. That's why she moved here in the first place, to get away from him. When questioned, James appeared genuinely shocked by Catherine's disappearance. He provided an alibi for the night in question. He had been at a faculty dinner until late, with dozens of witnesses. Cell phone records confirmed he had been on campus during the critical hours when Catherine was likely to have disappeared. "I know how this looks," James told Reynolds, his voice steady but his hands trembling slightly. "Yes, our marriage ended badly. Yes, I followed her here, but it was coincidence, the teaching position. I've been trying to give her space. I haven't even spoken to her since I moved here." This last claim was contradicted by Catherine's colleague at the library, who recalled seeing James and Catherine having what appeared to be an intense conversation at the coffee shop across from the library just a week before her disappearance. The investigation expanded as Reynolds began interviewing Catherine's neighbors. 3 of them mentioned seeing an unfamiliar blue sedan parked on the street several times in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. None had thought to note the license plate. Mr. Henderson, Catherine's elderly neighbor, provided another curious detail. "She came over about 2 weeks ago, seemed nervous, asked if I'd seen anyone in her yard at night. I hadn't, but I don't see too well in the dark these days. She mentioned something about feeling watched." Catherine's phone records showed nothing unusual: calls to Eliza, to work, to a few local businesses. Her internet search history was similarly mundane, except for one detail: repeated searches about home security systems in the week before she vanished. On day 7 of the investigation, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 13-year-old Zoe Banks, who lived 3 houses down, approached the police with her parents. "I was walking Baxter, that's our dog, past Ms. Miller's house around 9 p.m. that Monday," Zoe explained softly. "I saw someone sitting in a car across the street. They were just watching the house. Baxter barked and the car drove away really fast." Zoe's description matched the blue sedan other neighbors had mentioned. More importantly, she remembered part of the license plate, KRE7. This partial plate led investigators to Peter Kramer, a 38-year-old man living in the neighboring town of Redfield. Kramer had no obvious connection to Catherine, but when police ran his background, they discovered something disturbing. 3 years earlier, in another state, Kramer had been questioned, though never charged, in connection with the disappearance of another woman, a case that remained unsolved. When officers arrived at Kramer's apartment, he wasn't home. Neighbors hadn't seen him in several days. A search warrant was obtained, and what they found inside raised more questions than answers. The apartment was sparsely furnished but meticulously organized. On one wall hung a map with several locations circled in red ink. Oakwood was among them. More disturbing was a drawer containing newspaper clippings about missing women from various towns across New England. None of the cases had been connected before, and in the bedroom closet, officers found a box containing various personal items: a hairbrush with strands of auburn hair, Catherine's color, a library card receipt with Catherine's employee number, and a torn page that appeared to have come from a diary, but not the one found on Catherine's bed. Lab results later confirmed the hair belonged to Catherine. The diary page contained a single line in her handwriting: "I think someone has been in my house when I'm not home." As the investigation intensified, focusing now on Kramer, he remained nowhere to be found. His credit cards hadn't been used since the day before Catherine's disappearance. His cell phone was turned off. The blue sedan was discovered abandoned at a bus station 30 miles away. 17 days after Catherine disappeared, Eliza received a postcard in her Boston mailbox. The front showed a generic beach scene. The back, in unfamiliar handwriting, read simply, "She's safe now. She won't be hurt again." Postmarked from Portland, Maine, the card offered another puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. Detective Reynolds developed a theory pieced together from the evidence. Peter Kramer had been stalking Catherine. The tapping at her window, the sense of being watched, all pointed to his presence. But was he a predator or something else? The postcard suggested a disturbing possibility that in Kramer's mind he was somehow protecting Catherine. From what or whom remained unclear. Was it possible Kramer had known about Catherine's past with James? Had he witnessed something between them during that coffee shop conversation that triggered his intervention? 6 weeks after Catherine's disappearance, a security camera at a small bookstore in Vermont captured footage of a woman resembling Catherine, her hair now cut short and dyed dark, browsing shelves alongside a man whose face remained turned away from the camera. They left together, the woman showing no signs of distress. When shown the footage, Eliza stared at the grainy images for a long time before saying, "That's her walk, the way she holds her shoulders, that's Catherine." The case remains officially unsolved. Catherine Miller has not been found. Peter Kramer remains a person of interest but has never been located. James Miller still teaches at the community college under the cloud of suspicion that follows him through the halls. And the diary sits in an evidence locker, its final entry a testament to a life interrupted. The word "stop" continues to haunt investigators, a command, a warning, or perhaps a desperate plea. The fingerprint in blood raises questions that may never be answered. Was it Catherine's final communication, or something more sinister? In Oakwood, residents still speak of the librarian who vanished without a trace. Some claim to see a woman resembling Catherine in distant towns, always just a glimpse before she disappears around a corner or into a crowd. Others believe she never left Oakwood at all. Hemingway the cat now lives with Eliza in Boston. Sometimes, Eliza says, he sits at the window for hours, watching, waiting, as if expecting someone to return. Story 10. The aged envelope exuded a sense of time long past, its corners tinged with a faded yellow hue, yet the stamp upon it bore the crispness of recent dispatch journeyed just days prior. With cautious hands, the detective unfurled its contents. Nestled inside was a solitary sheet of paper, its words typed in a frenzied, erratic script. "I am sorry for what I did." The paper felt damp to the touch, carrying with it a faint odor of iron. Only upon closer inspection did the detective observe the reddish streak along the lower edge, a hue distinct from ordinary ink. Detective Sarah Morgan swiftly enclosed the letter within an evidence pouch, her gloved touch navigating it with practiced care. The forensic team's analysis confirmed her suspicions. The crimson tint was indeed human blood, its DNA linking back to an unsolved homicide case that had cast a shadow over the department for years. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, had been discovered in her apartment, bearing multiple stab wounds. Her laptop was absent, her notes strewn about, hinting that the assault might have been tied to an investigative piece she was pursuing. Despite myriad interviews and exhaustive scrutiny, the case had gone cold. Yet a glimmer of hope emerged as a mysterious letter found its way to the homicide division, bearing a simple address. The scant fingerprints on the paper and envelope hinted at a cautious sender, one who had likely shielded their touch with gloves. The postmark, a beacon of revelation after months of stagnation, spurred Morgan to convene her team in the briefing room, their gaze drawn to the array of photos, timelines, and profiles that had led to naught. She affixed the image of the letter at the heart of their investigation tableau, declaring, "This alters everything. Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner in this enduring quest, pondered the letter's contents. Or perhaps it's a ruse, a theatrical ploy to deceive us, he posited. The forensics team traced the unique typewriter impressions to a model long out of production, a relic from a bygone era, uncommon yet not unattainable. They embarked on a quest, reaching out to antique vendors and collectors across the region. As the inquiry burgeoned, they delved into Rebecca's past. Her editor painted a portrait of a relentless soul, dedicated to unveiling corruption's shroud. Her latest endeavor delved into a wealthy family embroiled in local politics, torn asunder by a disputed inheritance and siblings ensnared in accusations of manipulation. Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, once a pillar of support, now bore a visage of unease, subtle shifts in his demeanor betraying a newfound tension. Rebecca spoke of a shadow trailing her, he confessed in their latest exchange. I dismissed it as paranoia fueled by her investigation. I should have heeded her warning. While the team pursued this lead, a second missive arrived, bearing the same typewritten script and telltale bloodstain. This time the message unfurled a darker narrative. She unearthed truths about the family, the inheritance, the patriarch's demise. I never intended for events to escalate to such a dire extent. Their quest led them to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where the eldest son, Richard, hoarded an assortment of antiquities, including vintage typewriters. His explanation, when probed, rang rehearsed, his demeanor too polished to be genuine. The breakthrough materialized when fibers on the envelopes matched a bespoke stationery exclusive to the family's youngest scion, Eleanor. An inquiry exposed Richard's request to borrow her stationery, a revelation that unfurled a hidden chamber in his abode replete with incriminating evidence, newspaper clippings, surveillance snapshots, and a vintage typewriter akin to the missive's origin. Blood analysis affirmed the macabre truth it belonged to Rebecca. Unforeseen connections emerged between Richard and Michael, documented payments hinting at a sinister alliance in the days preceding Rebecca's demise. Confronted, Michael's resolve crumbled. She stumbled upon proof that Richard engineered his father's demise to expedite his inheritance, he divulged. I merely relayed her findings to Richard, hoping to deter her pursuit. I never envisioned he would resort to such drastic measures. The final puzzle piece materialized in Eleanor's possession, a clandestine recording capturing Richard and Michael conspiring against Rebecca. Richard's voice unequivocal. She must be permanently silenced. Bid to flee, Richard was apprehended. The prosecution wove a tapestry of evidence around the letters, the typewriter, financial transactions, and Eleanor's damning recording. Michael, in a bid for leniency, cooperated. Throughout the trial, Richard maintained his innocence, deflecting blame onto Michael. Yet the scales of justice tipped decisively, the jury swiftly returning a guilty verdict. As Richard faced the gavel's judgment, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving kin in the hushed courtroom. No solace could mend their shattered world, but the verdict delivered a semblance of closure. The blood-stained missives lingered in evidence, a testament that even the most meticulously orchestrated crimes leave a trace, and that remorse, whether authentic or strategic, can unravel the most meticulously plotted schemes. Rebecca Warren's case stood as a beacon in detective lore, a testament that breakthroughs often stem not from cutting-edge forensics, but from the weight of guilt borne by a killer's conscience, embodied in the antiquity of a typewriter, whispering truths in the stillness of the night. Story 11. The antique Polaroid held within its yellowed frame a snapshot frozen in time, capturing a birthday celebration long faded from memory. Faces beamed with joy, flickering candles casting a warm glow, nothing out of the ordinary at first glance. Yet, as the daughter sifted through the box of forgotten photographs left behind by her late mother, she noticed it. A shape lingering in the background of each image, subtly present yet distinctly out of place. A man shrouded in shadows, standing just beyond the reach of the candlelight. He was not a familiar face, not a relative or a friend. No one could recall him being part of those cherished moments, and yet, with each passing photo, he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held a trove of aged photographs capturing family gatherings from her childhood. What should have sparked nostalgia and warmth instead ignited a creeping sense of unease. The man in the background, a silent intruder in the visual echoes of joy and laughter. In the initial photograph, he was a mere shadow at the periphery, a ghostly figure at her 7th birthday party. As the snapshots progressed, he insinuated himself further into the scenes, moving ever closer to the unsuspecting subjects. By the 3rd photo, he hovered behind her uncle, a silent sentinel in the captured moments of happiness. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out to her father, her voice quivering as she questioned the identity of the mysterious figure haunting their family photos. A heavy silence followed her inquiry before her father's sharp intake of breath betrayed his own disquiet. "There shouldn't be anyone else in those pictures but family," he murmured, his words tinged with concern. Digital copies of the Polaroids were swiftly dispatched to her father, prompting an urgent call back. His tone, usually steady, now quivered with disbelief. "We would have noticed a stranger," he reiterated, his voice laced with apprehension. At the precinct, Detective Marcus Reed examined the eerie progression of photos spread across his desk, rain tapping softly against the windows, casting dancing shadows over the evidence. His experienced gaze traced the figure's movement through the gatherings, a subtle but undeniable advance towards the children in each frame. The detective's interest peaked as Sarah emphasized the pattern, the silent intruder's deliberate approach unveiled in the faded images. Reed's inquiries led to dead ends. No one could place the man in the photographs. No hired help, no uninvited guests. The secluded property, chosen for its privacy, offered no answers. Even facial recognition technology faltered, the mysterious figure adept at evading identification, a phantom lingering on the fringes of captured memories. It was Sarah's unyielding determination that unearthed further chilling evidence. More photos from different occasions and years revealed the same shadowy figure woven into the tapestry of her family's history. A computer specialist delved into the images, unveiling obscure details under the harsh glare of digital scrutiny: a scar, a ring, a glimpse of a face previously shrouded in darkness. A breakthrough came with dental records, linking the enigmatic figure to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker with a dark past. Keller had vanished after being linked to unsolved child abductions that had haunted the region for decades. His presence in the photos, a sinister specter lurking in the background, now tied to long cold cases of missing children. Authorities delved into Keller's past, unearthing grim remnants beneath the foundation of his former home. Trinkets belonging to vanished children, a chilling trail of heartbreak and horror left in his wake. The pieces fell into place, connecting a web of unsolved mysteries spanning generations, a shadow cast over countless families, a silent menace finally unmasked. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the damning evidence of decades-old atrocities, Sarah received the call confirming the identification of remains near one of the vacation properties. DNA had spoken the grim truth: one of the missing children had been found. As she gazed at the last birthday photo, the figure in the background loomed, a haunting presence now exposed to the light of justice. The box of photos, once filled with fleeting moments of happiness, now held the weight of history, a testament to the hidden dangers lurking within the frames of memory. Unseen but ever present, the shadowy figures that glide through celebrations, leaving behind only a whisper of their malevolent passage through time's frozen tapestry. Story 12. The old house had sat silent and still for years, a relic of a past marred by a mysterious disappearance. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of a young woman, Elise Winters, who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a void that echoed through the empty rooms. When new tenants dared to breathe life back into the abandoned space, they were met with a chilling discovery: the bedroom door stubbornly locked from the inside. With a sense of trepidation, they forced their way in, breaking the seal of solitude that had guarded the room for so long. Inside, the air hung heavy with neglect, the scent of dust dancing in the dim light. But it was not just the musty air that unsettled the new residents. The room bore signs of a peculiar preservation: the bed impeccably made, the mirror gleaming free of dust. And there, upon the desk, a solitary candle lay extinguished, its wax frozen in time like tears never shed. Amidst this eerie tableau, a notebook lay open, its pages filled with the ink of a ghostly pen. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truth in a sea of shadows, pored over Elise's writings while forensic experts meticulously combed the room for hidden truths. Elise Winters, aged 26, a paralegal entangled in a web of secrets and deceit. Her meticulous handwriting painted a picture of a woman on the brink of a revelation, a truth so dangerous it had led to her vanishing act years ago. The final entry, etched with urgency, hinted at a lurking danger, a presence unseen but felt. As the detective gathered evidence, a puzzle began to take shape. Elise, once a bright star in a prestigious law firm, had stumbled upon discrepancies that threatened to unravel a tapestry of deception woven by the powerful. Colleagues spoke of her descent into isolation, of late nights spent chasing shadows in the corridors of corporate power. She had seen too much, known too much, and in her pursuit of justice had become a target marked for erasure. The room whispered its secrets to those who listened, the silent witness to a struggle unseen, a battle fought in shadows and silence. But amidst the stillness, a glimmer of hope emerged, a hidden compartment, a key to unlock the truth buried deep beneath layers of deceit. Within the confines of a safe deposit box, revelations awaited, documents detailing a sinister dance between a pharmaceutical giant and a law firm hungry for power. The truth, like a specter, haunted the halls of justice, demanding to be heard. Through the lens of digital recordings, the voices of the guilty echoed a chilling conversation between Elise and Vincent Harriman, a man of influence entwined in a deadly dance of deception. Their words painted a portrait of greed and corruption, of lives sacrificed on the altar of corporate ambition. As the investigation deepened, shadows began to coalesce into a figure, the shadow of a man who had thought himself untouchable. Vincent Harriman, a puppeteer of destinies, found himself ensnared in a web of his own making. The truth, like a blade unsheathed, cut through the veil of lies, revealing a dark path that led to Elise's final moments. In a room locked in time, justice awaited its reckoning, a reckoning that bore witness to the courage of a woman who refused to be silenced. The courtroom, a stage for the unveiling of sins long buried, echoed with the voices of the fallen. Elise's mother, a beacon of strength in a sea of sorrow, spoke of a daughter whose legacy lived on in the echoes of a room untouched by time. And so the house stood once more in silence, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. The truth, a beacon in the darkness, shone bright in the void left by Elise's absence. Her spirit, a guardian of justice, watched over the room where her story unfolded, a story of courage, betrayal, and the relentless pursuit of truth. Story 13. In the quiet stillness of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious package arrived for Sarah Miller. Nestled within the plain envelope was a single brass key, weathered by time, its origins a puzzle. Sarah felt a strange familiarity as she held it in her hand, a sensation that whispered of hidden secrets. As she ventured to test the key in every lock of her home, a sense of unease crept over her when none yielded to its touch. This key did not belong to her, yet its presence stirred something dormant within her. Placing it gently on the coffee table, an unexpected sound filled the air. The grandfather clock in the hallway, long silenced, let out a solitary, haunting chime. Sarah, unsettled by this peculiar event, sought the counsel of authorities, sharing the tale of the enigmatic key that had found its way to her. What began as a simple anomaly soon unfurled into a web of darkness, weaving through the unsuspecting neighborhood. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer dismissed Sarah's concerns as a mere mix-up in the mail. But Sarah's intuition whispered of deeper truths, a nagging sense that something sinister lurked beneath the surface. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, unaware of the Pandora's box it would unlock. As the case landed on the desk of Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator with a knack for unraveling the threads of seemingly innocuous incidents, the brass key sat innocently, yet its presence cast a shadow of dread. Delving into Sarah's background revealed a life unmarred by criminality, a retired teacher, a widow, a mother, her existence unblemished by shadows. Forensic analysis yielded no fingerprints on the key save for Sarah's own, the envelope barren of clues save for a nondescript postmark. The key itself, a common schlage, bore the scars of time, hinting at a past shrouded in mystery and malice. A breakthrough emerged when Detective Harmon traced the key's unique pattern to a cold case, its echoes reverberating from 7 years past a storage unit harboring the remnants of unspeakable horrors. Blood-stained carpets, cutting tools, and haunting photographs of women, their faces frozen in unconscious repose, painted a chilling tableau of crimes unsolved. The trail led to Harold Jenkins, a shadow among neighbors, a man who had slipped through the cracks of suspicion. Sarah, an unwitting pawn in his macabre game, shuddered as the tendrils of darkness reached for her. The manhunt for Jenkins spanned the nation, a race against time to prevent further tragedy. As authorities closed in on the elusive predator, a grim truth emerged from the depths of a secluded cabin, a chamber of keys, each bearing a name, a date, a life extinguished too soon. The wilderness echoed with the whispers of the fallen as forensic teams unearthed the grim harvest of Jenkins' atrocities. Sarah, shielded from harm, bore witness to the price of her unwitting connection to a monster in plain sight. In a final, desperate act, Jenkins eluded capture, retreating to a solitary tower where he met his end, leaving behind a journal of horrors and a single brass key, a mirror to the one that had crossed Sarah's threshold. The pages of the journal spoke of obsession, of twisted desires veiled in the guise of normalcy, a legacy of pain and loss, a legacy that scarred a community to its core. For Sarah, the shadows lingered, the echoes of a nightmare too close for comfort. Her sanctuary tainted by the specter of a predator's gaze, she turned her back on the home that had sheltered her, seeking solace in the arms of a world forever changed. The clock in the hallway ticked on, its chime a haunting memory of a time when innocence and darkness collided. And in the silence that followed, a collection of brass keys sat in solemn vigil, bearing witness to the secrets they held, the lives they represented, and the truth they unlocked about the fragility of safety in a world where monsters wear masks of normalcy. Story 14, the mysterious man who vanished without a trace had made the coffee shop his sanctuary for years. His presence was as constant as the morning sun, yet he remained a ghostly figure to those around him. Known only by the coffee he ordered and the table he occupied, his true identity remained a haunting enigma. When the day arrived that he failed to grace the shop with his quiet presence, a ripple of unease spread through the familiar space. The barista, accustomed to his silent routine, noticed the absence like a missing note in a familiar melody. And when the police were called to investigate his deserted table, they discovered a wallet left behind, holding no answers, only more questions. Detective Sarah Mercer, drawn into the enigma of the man now dubbed John Doe, delved into the cryptic puzzle of his disappearance. The security footage revealed a man of unassuming appearance, blending seamlessly into the background of the bustling coffee shop. But his vanishing act defied all logic and reason, leaving Mercer grasping at shadows in her pursuit of the truth. As she sifted through the remnants of the man's life contained within the wallet, Mercer found herself facing a void where his identity should have been. A blank canvas of mystery stared back at her, challenging her to unravel the enigma of the man who existed yet didn't exist. The trail of clues led Mercer to a phone number on a blank business card, a faint whisper of connection in the vast emptiness of the man's existence. But the line offered no solace, only a silent void that echoed with the weight of unanswered questions. The notebook left behind, filled with cryptic symbols and sketches of unknown buildings, further deepened the mystery. Each page seemed to hold a piece of a puzzle that refused to fit together, confounding even the most seasoned code breakers. But it was the antique mirror hanging in the coffee shop that held the key to unlocking the secrets of the man who slipped through the cracks of reality. Its ornate frame whispered of ancient mysteries, its reflective surface a gateway to hidden truths. As Mercer peered into the mirror, she felt a shift in the fabric of reality, a subtle tremor that hinted at the existence of parallel worlds and unseen forces at play. And when the mirror was finally removed, a hidden chamber was revealed, containing a trove of identical wallets and a journal chronicling decades of elusive experiments in temporal manipulation. The journal spoke of window points and crossings between realities, of a coffee shop serving as an anchor in the vast expanse of existence. It hinted at a man who sought to transcend the boundaries of time and space to explore the uncharted territories of the mind. And as Mercer delved deeper into the mysteries surrounding the man who defied all notions of reality, she uncovered a truth that shook the very foundations of her understanding. The man known as John Doe was no mere mortal but a traveler between worlds, a beacon of light in the shadowy depths of the unknown. The final revelation came in the shattered remains of the mirror, a fractured portal that whispered of experiments concluded and windows closed. The man who didn't exist had slipped through the cracks of reality, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions and unsolved mysteries. And as the coffee shop faded into memory, its walls echoing with the whispers of a man lost to time, Detective Mercer found herself haunted by the enigma of the man who defied all definition. In her quiet moments, she could almost hear the rustle of pages turning, the faint echo of footsteps fading into the night. The case of the man who vanished without a trace remains a haunting enigma, a story whispered in the shadows of forgotten places. And as the world moves on, the legacy of the man who slipped through the cracks of reality lingers on, a ghostly reminder of the mysteries that lie just beyond our grasp. Story 15. In the quiet stillness of the night, where shadows dance along the walls and the whispers of the wind lull you into a world of dreams, there lies a tale of mystery and intrigue. A tale that begins with a young woman, Rebecca Morgan, who found herself reluctantly drawn to the attic of her new rental home one stormy evening. The rain tapped against the windows, a haunting melody that matched the unease in her heart as she ascended the creaking stairs. The attic greeted her with a musty scent of neglect, a realm of forgotten treasures shrouded in layers of dust and cobwebs. Among the forgotten relics, her gaze fell upon an old dollhouse, its tiny facade eerily detailed, as if frozen in time. Each miniature furniture piece meticulously placed, each room a silent witness to a bygone era. But as Rebecca peered closer, a shiver ran down her spine. The figures inside were not mere dolls, they were tiny hand-carved replicas of her own family. Her heart skipped a beat as she noticed something amiss. Every figure mirrored the exact positions of her family members downstairs, except for one, the figure meant to be her, standing by the attic door as if beckoning her into a world of secrets. Tracing her finger along the miniature roof, she felt the indentation where the tiny wooden figure stood, a silent sentinel in the eerie tableau. A chill crept through her veins, not from the cold draft that whispered through the rafters, but from the realization that the dollhouse should not have existed in the first place. This was not her childhood home. This was a place of unfamiliarity and hidden truths. The discovery sparked a chain of events that led to a harrowing revelation. A call to law enforcement, a family in distress, and a detective named Sarah Harmon delving into a mystery that defied logic. The dollhouse, a portal into a world of obsession and intrusion, revealed a sinister truth that shattered the fragile facade of normalcy. Forensic teams uncovered fingerprints that did not belong to the family, microscopic cameras hidden within the miniature figures, capturing moments of unsuspecting lives with chilling precision. The walls of the dollhouse held secrets, each room a reflection of a reality distorted by the gaze of an unseen observer. As the investigation unfolded, hidden passageways and makeshift living spaces emerged, unveiling a web of deception woven by a man named Martin Wells. A man consumed by possessive delusion, a man who sought to control not just a house, but the lives within it. The truth echoed through the halls of justice, as Wells' calm demeanor masked a mind twisted by loss and longing. The dollhouses, symbols of his fractured reality, a distorted mirror reflecting the souls he sought to possess. The story of the Morgan family, forever altered by the intrusion of a stranger's gaze, found solace in a new beginning, a fresh start far from the shadows of the past. But the echoes of the dollhouse lingered, a reminder that in the darkness, unseen eyes may still watch, unseen hands may still move the pieces of a twisted game. And so, as the night deepens and the world drifts into slumber, remember the tale of Rebecca and the dollhouse, a cautionary whisper in the dark, a reminder that even in the silence, secrets may lie hidden, waiting to be unveiled in the light of day. Story 16. In the quiet stillness of the night, a wooden plank shifted beneath her weight, revealing a hidden secret waiting to be discovered. With a gentle touch, she uncovered a world beneath the surface, a world filled with shadows and whispers of the past. As she gazed into the darkness below her home, a sense of unease crept over her, a feeling of being watched from unseen eyes. Detective Morgan Reed stood by her side, a beacon of calm in the midst of growing dread. The room held more than just forgotten belongings. It held a story of obsession and twisted fate. The walls of the hidden chamber were adorned with images of her daily life, captured in moments of unsuspecting vulnerability. Surveillance photos painted a portrait of a man consumed by his fixation, a man who had woven himself into the fabric of her existence without her ever knowing. Each click of the camera shutter was a thread in a tapestry of delusion, a shrine to a love that existed only in the mind of a stranger. As the investigation unfolded, a darker truth emerged. The man who had lived in the shadows, Walter Green, had not been content with mere observation. His intentions had been more sinister, his desires more twisted. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together, revealing a plan that had been years in the making, a plan that had almost reached its chilling culmination. Through interviews and evidence, Detective Reed uncovered the depths of Walter's obsession, a fixation that had roots in a past marked by delusion and unrequited love. His actions spoke of a mind unhinged, a heart twisted by a longing that could never be fulfilled. The key found in his locker, the replica of her life in the storage unit, all pieces of a puzzle that painted a picture of a man consumed by a fantasy that had spiraled out of control. As Sarah stood in the empty house, haunted by the echoes of a presence that had long since departed, she made a choice to leave behind the shadows of the past. The house was sold, the hidden room sealed off, but the memory of Walter Green lingered like a ghost in the walls. For Sarah, the nightmare had passed, but the scars remained, a reminder of how fragile the line between safety and danger truly was. And so life moved on, the secrets of the hidden room fading into whispers of a bygone era. The new owners knew nothing of the darkness that had once lurked beneath their feet, of the man who had watched and waited in the shadows. But for those who had witnessed the unveiling of the truth, the story of the hidden room beneath the floor became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the unseen dangers that could lie just beyond the surface, waiting to be uncovered in the depths of the night. Story 17. It began with a mere pocket dial and accidental transmission of static and muffled sounds, initially dismissed as inconsequential by the operator until a voice pierced through the chaos. A woman's voice filled with urgency and fear whispered, "He's here." And then an eerie silence descended. The phone number traced back to an empty house, a dwelling forsaken by its inhabitants for years on end. No signs of forced entry, no disturbances in the abandoned abode. Yet in the kitchen veiled by layers of dust, the phone rested upon the counter, its screen aglow with an otherworldly presence. The call had been placed mere minutes ago, a chilling realization that gripped Detective Morgan Reed as she replayed the haunting message for the 5th time. The whispered words lingered in the air, haunting her desperation, terror, and the inexplicable. This forsaken property once belonged to the Sullivan family, who had vacated the premises following a devastating house fire that ravaged the West Wing. Since then, the house remained uninhabited. The caretaker attested to monthly visits, adamantly insisting that no unauthorized individuals had trespassed in years. Background check on the number, Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The revelation that the number belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the family, who had tragically perished in a car accident 3 years prior, only deepened the enigma shrouding the case. As Morgan gazed upon the evidence bag containing the phone, a perplexing puzzle unfolded before her. The enigma defied logic, a deceased woman's phone emanating calls from a deserted domicile. The dust on the counter bore witness to a disturbance solely where the phone perched, as if materializing out of thin air. The forensic analysis yielded scant results. No discernible fingerprints on the device except for elusive smudges that defied identification. No trace of footprints leading to or from the house, with locked doors and sealed windows preserving the eerie stillness within. The recording, a mere 11 seconds of static, labored breaths and 5 chilling words, became the focal point of their inquiry. Voice analysis confirmed an unsettling truth. The whisper bore a 98% match to Catherine Sullivan's voice from archived recordings. The timestamp further unnerved them, revealing that the call had transpired at the exact moment of Catherine's demise 3 years prior, down to the precise minute. Morgan and Walsh delved into the lives of all who had known Catherine. Her father, now remarried, appeared genuinely perplexed. Her mother, residing in solitude within a modest apartment, crumbled upon hearing the spectral recording. "That's my Katie," she murmured tearfully. "She sounds so frightened." Catherine's former boyfriend, Mark Jennings, at the time of her passing, provided an alibi for the night of the call. His presence at the hospital, validated by numerous witnesses and surveillance footage, seemingly absolved him of suspicion. The abandoned house stood as a silent sentinel, a call that should never have been made, yet reverberated through the ether nonetheless. The investigation meandered until a pivotal call from Catherine's mother breathed new life into the case. "I unearthed something among her belongings," she quivered. "Katie kept a journal, the final entry. You must see it." Within the journal lay meticulous entries chronicling Catherine's tumultuous relationship with Mark. The initial ardor gave way to possessiveness, isolation, and eventually sheer dread. The concluding entry sent shivers down Morgan's spine. "He discovered my intentions to depart. His rage knows no bounds. In the event of my demise, let it be known it was not accidental." Confronted anew, Mark's facade crumbled under the weight of the journal's damning contents. "Speculations based on mere words hold no merit," he retorted. The revelation of his presence at the accident site before emergency responders raised troubling questions. "I sought her out when she failed to arrive. My concern led me to her." Persisting in their pursuit of the truth, investigators revisited the crash site. Though the car had long been removed, Morgan sanctioned the use of ground-penetrating radar. 20 feet from the wreckage, a startling discovery emerged: the buried remains of Catherine's actual phone, her primary device kept at her parents' residence. Forensic scrutiny of the interred phone unveiled deleted text exchanges between Catherine and her sister on the fatal night. "Mark has uncovered my intentions to leave him. He tails me in his vehicle." Subsequent messages painted a harrowing picture. "He's forcing me off the road." A re-examination of Catherine's autopsy photographs by the medical examiner unearthed anomalies. The injuries bore marks inconsistent with a mere vehicular accident. Defensive wounds marred her hands, bruising patterns suggestive of strangulation. Upon law enforcement's arrival to apprehend Mark, they were met with an empty abode. His apartment housed a shrine dedicated to Catherine photographs, pilfered mementos, and macabre clippings chronicling her demise. Among his possessions lay audio editing software and scripts detailing the fabrication of the phantom call, a twisted ploy to perpetuate his deceit and torment Catherine's bereaved kin. The tendrils of the investigation extended to previous cases involving Mark, a former emergency responder, unveiling 2 additional suspicious deaths of young women, both deemed accidents, yet both entwined in his web of malevolence. 6 days into the pursuit, officers spied Mark's vehicle parked outside the Sullivan residence. Within, they discovered him seated in the kitchen, fixated on a phone identical to Catherine's. Surrendering without resistance, he divulged to Morgan during interrogation. She refused to remain silent, even beyond the veil of death. Her accusations echoed ceaselessly. I needed the world to perceive her spectral presence, a witness unable to testify against me. The ensuing trial unfolded swiftly, the jury rendering a verdict of guilty for first-degree murder in under 3 hours. As the pronouncement reverberated through the courtroom, Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her heart. Justice, not through supernatural machinations, but by the resolute voice Catherine had left behind in written word, in her inked fears, in her final plea for deliverance. The phone from the abandoned abode now rests in the evidence vault. Occasionally, whispers circulate among the precinct officers, a phantom ring resonating through the halls, though the phone's power source had long been disconnected. Catherine's narrative endures not as a spectral fable, but as a testament that victims, even in silence, find avenues to speak, to seek solace, and to transcend the confines of mortality. Story 18, The Intriguing Tale of Whispers Within Walls. The arrival of Michael and Sarah Klein to the grand Victorian-era home seemed like the beginning of a tranquil chapter in their lives. Nestled within the embrace of its historic walls, the couple felt drawn to the elegant charm that whispered stories of days long past. However, as they embarked on the unassuming journey of making the house their own, little did they know that the dormant secrets within those walls were about to awaken. It all started with a simple water stain in the master bedroom, a faint reminder of time's passage. Sarah's keen eye caught the yellowish hue seeping through the floral wallpaper, prompting them to investigate further. As Michael gingerly probed the discolored spot, the paper surrendered, unveiling hidden layers beneath. Peeling back the damaged wallpaper revealed a tapestry of the past, a visual narrative of bygone decades. Paisley patterns from the 1970s, stripes from an earlier era, and then unexpectedly words emerged from the depths of time. Dark ink against aged paper, a name repeated endlessly, Alina Winters, etched in a frenzy of handwriting that spoke of desperation and turmoil. Alina Winters, Sarah murmured, her fingertips trailing the haunting script, a name that held no significance in their world, yet seemed to echo through the walls with an eerie insistence. Intrigued and unsettled, they delved into the mystery that lay before them. Late into the night, bathed in the soft glow of their kitchen, Michael and Sarah delved into the digital realm, seeking answers to the enigma that had found its way into their home. Property records yielded no trace of Alina Winters, leading them down a winding path of discovery that culminated in a single archived article, a missing persons case from 30 years past. The photograph of the vanished woman bore an uncanny resemblance to the one who had handed them the keys to their new abode, Margaret Cavendish, a name that now seemed shrouded in shadows of uncertainty. The missing woman's story unfolded before them, a tale of mystery and loss that intertwined with their present in inexplicable ways. Driven by an insatiable curiosity that bordered on obsession, Sarah and Michael embarked on a quest for truth, peeling back the layers of time with each passing day. Conversations with previous homeowners, consultations with retired detectives, and the unearthing of hidden spaces within the house led them deeper into a labyrinth of secrets. As the investigation unfolded, a chilling revelation emerged, a revelation that blurred the lines between reality and delusion. The walls that had borne witness to decades of silence now whispered of a fractured mind, of identities intertwined in a dance of deception and tragedy. DNA analysis and fingerprint comparisons unveiled a tale of duplicity and darkness, where the boundaries of sanity blurred and a web of lies spun by a troubled soul unraveled before their eyes. The truth, when finally revealed, cast a shadow over the tranquil facade of their dream home, turning it into a stage for a chilling drama that had unfolded within its very walls. And so, as the sun set on the grand Victorian-era home, its secrets laid bare for all to see, Michael and Sarah stood witness to a tale of loss, obsession, and ultimately redemption. The whispers within the walls had finally found their voice, echoing through the corridors of time as a reminder of the fragility of the human mind and the enduring power of truth. And as the night descended, enveloping the house in a cloak of silence, the echoes of the past faded into whispers, carried away by the gentle breeze, lulling all who listened into a peaceful slumber. Story 19. They stumbled upon it in the attic, concealed beneath a worn-out blanket, a porcelain doll, fragile and aged, with its wide, unblinking blue eyes painted on. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, had never laid eyes on it before. They chuckled dismissively, deeming it just another neglected relic. However, that night, as they nestled into bed, a sense of unease crept in. The atmosphere grew heavier, the silence more profound. And come morning, the doll was no longer in the attic. It sat instead at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael had acquired the Victorian house at an auction, captivated by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of its troubled past. They were drawn to the tales woven into its walls, unaware that they would soon be entangled in them. Detective Rachel Winters received the call on a crisp autumn morning. The female victim was discovered in the master bedroom, her body arranged in an unnatural pose, limbs bent at precise angles, terror etched on her face. The male victim, found in the hallway, seemed as though he had been attempting to flee. The crime scene was pristine, no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle beyond the final moments. The positioning is intentional, Detective Winters murmured into her recorder, while crime scene photographers meticulously documented every detail. The female victim seems staged, like a doll plucked from a display case. The investigation commenced with thorough interrogations of neighbors. An elderly lady recalled glimpsing a shadow flitting behind an upstairs window when the couple should have been away at work. Another mentioned hearing what resembled a child's laughter emanating from the vacant house at night. Each testimony added a layer of disquiet to the burgeoning case file. The forensics team uncovered minuscule fibers throughout the house, antique cotton and silk, matching materials used in vintage doll attire. The fibers were most concentrated around the victims and the attic space. More unsettling was what they did not find. No fingerprints other than the victims, no trace of intruder DNA, no footprints in the dust where they shouldn't have been. It's as if the perpetrator was never physically present, remarked the lead forensic analyst. The focus then shifted to the property's history. Records unveiled a pattern: 3 previous owners had met mysterious ends over 6 decades. Each case remained unsolved, with reports citing bizarre anomalies. One family described discovering antique toys in freshly cleaned rooms. Another recounted hearing footsteps when the house should have been empty. Delving deeper, Detective Winters unearthed a newspaper clipping from years past. A renowned doll maker had once inhabited the house with his daughter. The child met an untimely demise under suspicious circumstances, and the father, though questioned, was never charged. Before taking his own life, he crafted one final doll, a perfect replica of his daughter. Strangely, the inventory list from Sarah and Michael's purchase of the house made no mention of such a doll. As the investigation progressed, a common thread emerged among the victims. They had all made alterations to the house, particularly the attic space. Sarah and Michael had begun renovations shortly before their tragic deaths, intending to convert the attic into a home office. A breakthrough arrived with the discovery of old photographs concealed beneath the attic floorboards. The images depicted the doll maker and his collection, one doll standing out identical to the one found by Sarah and Michael. In the pictures, the doll appeared to shift positions, almost moving between snaps taken moments apart. Infrared scans of the walls unveiled a chilling sight: tiny handprints, invisible to the naked eye, trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, alongside an enigmatic residue of porcelain dust mixed with unidentifiable organic matter. The case took a peculiar turn during Detective Winter's interview with a distant relative of the doll maker. The woman divulged family tales of the doll maker using unconventional materials and techniques, supposedly infusing human elements into his prized creations to breathe life into them. She whispered the most exquisite dolls were never meant to be mere playthings. The investigation hit a roadblock post this revelation. No suspects surfaced, no conventional rationale aligned with the evidence. The case remained open but grew frigid. Detective Winters requested to hold the doll as evidence, securing it in a locked cabinet at the station. The following morning, officers found her office door ajar, the cabinet empty. The detective herself was seated at her desk, disoriented but unscathed, with no recollection of the previous night. Surveillance footage displayed naught but static during the mysterious hours. The house was auctioned off once more, its sordid past casting a shadow on its value despite its architectural grandeur. The new owners found the attic devoid of the doll, save for a neatly folded tattered blanket in one corner. The doll remained unrecovered, and Sarah and Michael's deaths joined the roster of unsolved cases occasionally whispered about in the precinct. Some claimed to catch a glimpse of it in the evidence storage, though inventory checks contradicted its presence. Detective Winters retired prematurely, citing personal reasons. On her final day, she extracted a solitary item from her private files, a photograph of the doll maker and his collection. She sealed it in an envelope marked "Never Open" and stowed it away. The new owners reported no disturbances, opting to leave the attic undisturbed. However, on tranquil nights, neighbors would mention seeing a faint shadow flit behind the attic window and hearing what seemed like the soft laughter of a child. Story 20. She cleared the mist off the mirror, peering at her reflection. Yet an unsettling feeling crept in. Her appearance seemed normal, her attire unchanged, but the longer she gazed, the more a sense of unease enveloped her. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a motion not of her own making, and as she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing. This peculiar episode marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's eerie journey. What transpired next would baffle investigators and cast a shadow over the community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a modest flat nestled in a tranquil suburban enclave. Known as methodical and reserved, she led a life of solitude yet maintained polite relations with her neighbors. She toiled as a data analyst in a mid-sized firm, her days defined by routine and precision. No one would have suspected that she would soon be at the heart of one of the decade's most enigmatic criminal inquiries. The initial signs were subtle. Rebecca noticed minor items in her home had been rearranged, nothing missing, just displaced. A coffee mug shifted to a new shelf, books rearranged on the shelves, her toothbrush placed on the opposite side of the sink. She brushed off these anomalies as mere lapses, attributing them to long hours spent scrutinizing spreadsheets under harsh fluorescent lights, straining her eyes until reality blurred. Detective Marion Shaw received the first complaint after Rebecca, following weeks of disturbances, finally reached out to the authorities. Upon initial assessment, no clear evidence of a crime emerged, perhaps a matter more suited for mental health services than law enforcement. Shaw documented the grievance but deemed it a non-urgent case amidst a pile of other reports. There was no concrete evidence, Shaw later recalled. No signs of forced entry, no missing items, just a woman sensing a disturbance in her home. The pivotal moment arrived with the bathroom mirror incident. During her second encounter with the police, Rebecca recounted the event with vivid detail, how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she felt under constant surveillance even when alone. This time she presented proof, a self-installed security camera aimed at her front door. The footage uncovered a chilling revelation that sent shivers through even the most seasoned officers. The grainy video captured Rebecca leaving for work in the morning, followed by an exact replica of her entering the apartment 20 minutes later using a key. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of tampering or digital manipulation, only to find none. The intruder mimicked Rebecca's movements, attire, and even carried her distinctive leather bag. Yet, according to the time-stamped footage from her workplace, Rebecca had already swiped into her office across town. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can imitate her with uncanny precision." The investigation deepened. Fingerprints found throughout the apartment solely matched Rebecca's. No foreign DNA was detected. Neighbors reported nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca going about her daily routines. One neighbor, Mrs. Keller, mentioned greeting Rebecca upon her return one evening and receiving no response, an occurrence she found unusual but not alarming. Rebecca started documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations in her flat escalated. Food she didn't recall consuming vanished from her fridge. Her computer displayed searches she had not conducted. Most unsettling were the photos on her phone, self-portraits resembling her but taken without her recollection. In some images, her expression appeared subtly distorted, the smile too wide, the gaze too intense. "I feel as though I'm losing my mind," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. "Or perhaps someone is attempting to make me believe so." A breakthrough occurred when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only infiltrated when Rebecca left for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, pre-planned activities with predictable durations. "Someone intimately acquainted with your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't random, it's targeted surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist postulated that they were dealing with a fixation case, a person fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, living her life, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Although rare, such cases were documented in psychological literature. The suspect typically experienced a psychological rupture, fixating on a victim who embodied traits they desired: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The investigation narrowed its focus when Rebecca mentioned a former colleague, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic behavior. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she sent Rebecca a series of unsettling emails. "We are almost identical," one message stated. "At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's abode. The findings transformed the case from unsettling to ghastly. One chamber in Lily's residence had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were plastered with photographs, countless snapshots of Rebecca entering her apartment, shopping, socializing, all taken clandestinely. A wardrobe contained precise replicas of Rebecca's attire. Makeup identical to Rebecca's preferred brands adorned a vanity, accompanied by detailed notes on her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most damning were the practice videos. Lily had recorded herself emulating Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions. The evolution was evident, initial attempts clumsy and conspicuous, later ones nearly indistinguishable from the authentic Rebecca. "She aspired to be me," murmured Rebecca upon viewing the evidence. "Not merely imitating me, but erasing me." Forensic specialists uncovered sophisticated tools for replicating keys and cloning electronic access cards. Lily had devised an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a calendar with meticulous forecasts of her schedule. The investigators grappled with deciphering Lily's ultimate objective. Journals discovered in her residence contained rambling entries that alternated between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same paragraph. The final entry sent shivers down their spines. "Soon only one of us shall remain. The stronger version will prevail." When authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Her apartment bore signs of abrupt departure, drawers left ajar, certain devices missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was relocated to a secure location under continuous surveillance, placed in protective custody. For 3 weeks, every place associated with her past existence was under intense monitoring. Lily never resurfaced. The investigation took a chilling turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Despite being on leave, Rebecca was sighted entering the building. Video footage confirmed it. A person identical to Rebecca had accessed the premises using a valid ID card, proceeded to her former desk, and pored over her documents for 40 minutes before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained secluded in a safeguarded sanctuary, unable to have been present at the office. The ramifications became apparent. Lily had not fled, she had made her move. She was now assuming Rebecca's identity, stepping into her existence while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unsolved. Lily Winters remains at large. Rebecca Thorne refrains from reclaiming her past life, opting instead to forge a new identity in an undisclosed location. Detective Shaw keeps a photograph on her desk, 2 women bearing a striking resemblance. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other is Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their features, searching for disparities, the subtle nuances that would differentiate one from the other. The most unsettling aspect, Shaw imparts to new recruits, is not that someone can resemble or sound like you. It's that they could yearn to embody you so intensely that they obliterate themselves in the process. Identity is not merely what we exhibit to the world, it's what we safeguard most vigilantly. And occasionally, we only realize its worth when someone attempts to seize it. Story 21. The gentle current whispered secrets as it flowed slowly that tranquil morning, the water mirroring the sky like a shimmering glass sheet. The lone fisherman, lost in his thoughts, almost missed the peculiar sight of a weathered suitcase bobbing near the shore. Initially dismissing it as discarded clothes, he felt a tug of curiosity pulling him closer as he waded through the shallows. The air around him suddenly thickened with a sickly sweet stench, unmistakable in its intensity. The suitcase was entwined with chains, its edges tinged with the telltale signs of rust from exposure to the elements. When the authorities pried open the rusted case, the contents within sent shivers down their spines. Instead of garments, they were met with a haunting sight: tangled locks of hair, fingers frozen in a silent grasp of terror. And at the bottom, a cryptic note left a chilling message: "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer arrived at the scene, a handkerchief pressed delicately against her nose to ward off the oppressive odor that lingered in the air. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s named Catherine Walsh, lay before her, her once dark hair now sodden and her pale skin bearing the marks of her watery grave. The diligent medical examiner meticulously catalogued every detail before the body was taken away, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Mercer's keen eye didn't dwell on the brutal method of disposal. Rather, it fixated on the unsettling care taken with the victim's appearance. Her nails were perfectly manicured, her hair styled recently, and she was adorned in expensive finery. Observing the gentle lap of the water against the muddy shore, Mercer murmured, "She wasn't killed here. She was prepared, displayed." Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent known for her expertise in selling high-end properties, had lived a life shrouded in mystery. Divorced, childless, she resided in solitude in an affluent neighborhood, her ambitions and meticulous nature defining her public persona. Her abrupt disappearance, reported by her concerned assistant after she missed a crucial showing, raised alarm bells among her colleagues, who spoke of her dedication and unwavering commitment to her work. The investigation led to Walsh's meticulously maintained home, a pristine abode where everything seemed unnervingly perfect. Designer furniture stood in immaculate order, every surface devoid of even a speck of dust. In the refrigerator, meals were neatly arranged in uniform containers, labeled meticulously by day. Her closet, a rainbow of colors and protective storage bags for her shoes, hinted at a life curated with precision and care. However, a subtle anomaly caught the investigators' attention, a slightly ajar drawer in her home office. Within its confines lay a leather-bound journal, its pages whispering of secrets untold. The final entry sent a shiver down Mercer's spine. "He's watching again. Same car, different plates." Delving into Walsh's digital footprint, a disturbing pattern emerged. Her inbox was flooded with messages from unknown senders, all bearing the ominous phrase, "I see your perfection," sent consistently at the same time each day. Her internet history revealed searches for home security systems and self-defense tools, hinting at a growing unease that had plagued her final days. Connecting the dots between the crime scene and Walsh's personal life, Mercer pieced together a chilling narrative. "Our killer is methodical," she murmured to her partner. "This was no crime of passion. This was a meticulously planned ritual." A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source, the local pawnshop owner who recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, conspicuously absent from her belongings. The trail led to a man named Michael Linden, a nondescript maintenance worker whose unassuming demeanor belied a sinister truth. Surveillance footage revealed his frequent visits to Walsh's building, sometimes with his maintenance cart, other times without, always during her absences while showing properties. Upon searching Linden's modest apartment, a macabre gallery of photographs adorned the walls, capturing Walsh and other women in moments of vulnerability, all sharing a striking resemblance. Some images were defaced with red marks, a chilling testament to Linden's twisted obsession. Walsh, it seemed, was but one of his victims. Hidden behind a false wall in Linden's closet lay a grotesque shrine, a shrine to his victims. Each item meticulously arranged: a lock of hair, a stained tissue, a set of keys accompanied by a meticulously kept notebook detailing their lives, habits, and routines with terrifying precision. As Linden sat in the cold interrogation room, his demeanor unnervingly calm, the truth spilled from his lips like venom. "They were imperfect," he uttered flatly. "They flaunted perfection, but I saw through their facades. Catherine's disorderly desk drawer, the missed spot in her lipstick, her perfection was a lie." The search for the other victims mentioned in Linden's note led investigators to remote locations where 2 more suitcases surfaced, each containing a woman bearing a striking resemblance to Walsh. Both victims, like Catherine, were successful real estate agents known for their exacting standards and attention to detail. Throughout Linden's trial, a silent horror gripped the courtroom as the prosecution unveiled his meticulous methods. Each woman had been stalked, their lives meticulously dissected before Lyndon enacted his twisted version of correction, grooming them, dressing them in their finest, before snuffing out their lives. The families of the victims watched in silent anguish as the judge handed Lyndon a life sentence without the possibility of parole. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially closed, but the questions lingered like shadows in the night. What drove Lyndon to fixate on these particular women? What inner imperfection was he desperately seeking to erase through his heinous acts? As the river continued its unhurried journey downstream, carrying away all traces of the horrific crimes, Mercer found herself haunted by the chilling notebooks that bore witness to the darkest depths of human depravity. They served as a stark reminder that behind the veneer of normalcy, beneath the facade of perfection, lurked a darkness that could consume even the most unsuspecting souls. In the quiet of the precinct on Mercer's desk, those notebooks stood as a solemn testament to the insidious nature of evil, a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those who walk among us, concealed in plain sight, waiting patiently for a single flaw to be exposed. Story 22, The Unearthed Message. Renovations always have a way of unraveling the past, revealing forgotten relics and hidden secrets. When Sarah and Michael embarked on restoring their Victorian-era home, they anticipated uncovering old newspapers and trinkets, not a cryptic letter tucked beneath the floorboards. The couple stood frozen as they unfolded the yellowed paper, the ink barely legible yet the message ominous, "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could process the unsettling discovery, 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the silent house, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed was called to the scene, her experienced eyes taking in the exposed floorboards and the eerie note. With gloved hands, she carefully retrieved the fragile paper, knowing that the couple's inadvertent touch had already compromised potential evidence. As Reed delved into the mystery, she found that Sarah and Michael were ordinary newlyweds with no apparent skeletons in their closets. However, the house itself harbored a darker past. Previously owned by the Hargrove family, the property had been deserted after the passing of Margaret Hargrove, the last resident. Margaret's history raised eyebrows, no enemies, no suspicious circumstances surrounding her death. Yet the note hinted at a hidden truth, a long-buried secret waiting to be unearthed. Forensic analysis dated the message back 2 decades, suggesting a time of fear and desperation. Reed's investigation led her to delve into the lives of Margaret and her late husband, Franklin. Franklin, once a respected teacher, had a shadowy side that emerged in his later years, a paranoia that hinted at a looming threat, a collector who demanded payment. A breakthrough came with a conversation with Margaret's sister, who revealed the chilling presence of a mysterious figure known as the Collector. Franklin's gambling debts had spiraled out of control, leading to a fatal confrontation that left a haunting legacy within the house's walls. Forensic teams unearthed a hidden truth beneath the foundation, a skeleton identified as Victor Mercer, the enigmatic collector who had vanished without a trace. Margaret's diaries painted a grim picture of fear and guilt, of a life haunted by the echoes of those 3 ominous knocks. The case unraveled a tale of betrayal and violence, of secrets buried deep within the confines of the old house. Justice, albeit delayed, was finally served as the truth came to light, laying to rest the specter of the past that had lingered for years. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, sold the property, leaving it abandoned and silent. Local whispers speak of ghostly echoes in the night, of three distinct knocks that pierce the darkness, a reminder of the tragedies that once unfolded within those walls. As Detective Reed closed the case, she pondered the enigma that still lingered, the unanswered questions that whispered in the shadows. Some mysteries, she mused, defy easy resolution, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered whispers and chilling warnings. Story 23. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a mysterious package arrived at Sarah Miller's doorstep. No return label, no tracking number, just a plain cardboard box, its edges dampened by the morning dew. The package wasn't meant for her. The name on it, Daniel Whitaker, was unfamiliar. Despite the misdelivery, Sarah's curiosity got the best of her. She hesitated for a moment, then decided to open it. Inside, instead of the expected books or clothes, she found a solitary VHS tape with a sticky note that simply read, "Watch alone." Sarah held the black plastic cassette in her hands, feeling an inexplicable weight to it, as if it carried secrets too heavy to bear. She ran her fingers over the worn edges, the imperfections in the plastic casing, and the urgency in the handwritten note strokes. Outside, the usual sounds of suburban life continued: a distant dog's bark, children's laughter, the rhythmic hum of a lawnmower. Bringing the package inside, Sarah hesitated. She had never heard of Daniel Whitaker, and the name didn't ring a bell in her memory. Her VCR, a relic of the past, sat quietly in the corner, beckoning her to unravel the mystery. Against her instincts, she inserted the tape. Static filled the screen before a dimly lit room came into view. A man, Daniel Whitaker, appeared on the screen, his weary face illuminated by a single lamp. He spoke softly but with determination, denying his involvement in a murder, pleading for someone to believe him. As Sarah watched, she couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at play. The man on the tape, Daniel Whitaker, recounted a twisted tale of framed evidence, a wrongful accusation, and a deep conspiracy that led to a woman's murder. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in the case, puzzling over the appearance of multiple tapes from Whitaker, each revealing a layer of deception and betrayal. As she delved deeper, she uncovered a web of lies surrounding the victim, Catherine Walsh, and a powerful pharmaceutical company, PharmaCorp. Walsh, it seemed, had stumbled upon damning evidence of corporate corruption, a discovery that cost her life. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together as Sarah received a second package, containing incriminating documents that exposed the truth behind Walsh's murder. With the help of Sarah and other unwitting recipients of the tapes, Detective Ramirez traced Whitaker's footsteps, unearthing a trail of deceit that led straight to the heart of PharmaCorp. The evidence mounted, revealing a nefarious plot to silence whistleblowers and manipulate the truth. In a climactic moment, Sarah's keen eye caught a crucial detail in one of the tapes, a reflection that led to the unraveling of the conspiracy. Inside a storage unit, the final pieces of the puzzle fell into place, exposing the orchestrators of the heinous crime. Justice, slow but unyielding, prevailed as the truth emerged from the shadows. Executives were indicted, the drug was halted, and Daniel Whitaker's innocence was affirmed. The tapes, once symbols of deception, became relics of a hard-fought victory, reminders of the thin line between truth and manufactured reality. In a quiet moment of reflection, Sarah and Daniel stood on her porch, the place where it all began. She asked him why he had chosen her address for the delivery of the tape. His response was simple yet profound. The algorithm had chosen her, a stranger untainted by the lies spun by those in power. As they parted ways, Sarah realized that sometimes the wrong address can lead to the right person, and the truth, no matter how well hidden, will always find its way to those willing to seek it. The VHS tapes, now evidence of a hard-won battle against corruption, served as a testament to the power of curiosity and the resilience of the human spirit. Story 24, the old apartment exuded a sense of history, its time-worn walls holding secrets whispered by the past. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled, creating a familiar symphony that echoed through the corridors. To the casual observer, it was nothing out of the ordinary, just the building settling into its age. But within those aged walls, a chilling mystery unfurled, shrouded in whispers that danced through the vents like ghostly tendrils. One fateful day, a presence made itself known to Detective Morgan Shaw in the empty apartment. Her eyes fixated on the rusted vent cover, pried open as if beckoning her into the enigmatic depths beyond. The forensics team meticulously combed through the scene, capturing each detail with flashing cameras. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had vanished without a trace, her absence noticed only when a lingering scent wafted through the building. Officer Patel's voice carried the weight of disbelief as he recounted Alina's claims of voices seeping through the vents, a tale dismissed as a product of the aging infrastructure. Shaw knelt by the vent, tracing the desperate marks left by fingernails, a silent testament to a struggle unseen. The apartment bore the traces of a life interrupted: a neatly made bed, a solitary coffee mug, a chair positioned beneath the vent as if expecting a visitor. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher, had spiraled into paranoia in the days leading to her disappearance. Her sister's shaky account painted a portrait of a woman haunted by unseen forces, convinced of a presence lurking just beyond perception. Shaw's intuition sharpened as she pieced together the puzzle before her, each clue a thread leading to a tapestry of dread. The fibers entangled in the vent grating, the foreign fingerprint etched inside the cover, and the haunting recordings from Alina's phone painted a harrowing picture. The whispers that plagued Alina were not mere figments of a troubled mind. They were tendrils of a malevolent force weaving through the walls of the building. The building's history whispered tales of previous tenants who fled in haste, their sanity fraying at the seams from phantom voices that echoed in the night. Harold Weber, the unassuming superintendent with keys to every door, stood at the center of Shaw's scrutiny. His stoic facade crumbled under her relentless gaze, revealing a man entangled in a web of his own making. As the investigation delved deeper, a hidden passage concealed within Alina's bathroom unveiled a chilling truth. Someone had dwelled within the walls, a silent observer entwined with the building's very essence. Shaw's team unearthed a trove of surveillance within Weber's computer, a voyeuristic collection documenting lives lived in unwitting scrutiny. Weber's serene demeanor belied a darkness that seeped through his pores, a sinister purpose that drove him to insidious lengths. The artifacts discovered in his possession spoke of lives disrupted, souls ensnared in a macabre dance orchestrated by his deviant desires. Shaw's skin prickled with unease as the extent of Weber's depravity unfurled before her. The courtroom bore witness to Weber's chilling charisma, his declarations of a symbiotic bond with the building ringing with unsettling conviction. The jury's swift verdict of guilt did little to dispel the lingering whispers that trailed in his wake. As he was led away, a phantom smile played on his lips, a haunting echo of the voices that had guided his descent into madness. The vacant apartment building now stands as a monument to the darkness that once dwelled within its walls. Despite the facade of renewal, whispers still linger in the corridors, a spectral reminder of the souls touched by a malevolent presence. The residents, haunted by unseen forces, grapple with a truth too chilling to ignore. The building remembers, and its whispers never truly fade into silence. Story 25: The Mystery of the Whispering House. She had decided to refresh the nursery before the baby's arrival, wanting to create a cozy space for her little one. The walls wore a faded blue, a color that seemed to whisper untold stories of the past. As she painted over the old hue with a fresh coat of white, a hidden secret began to emerge. Letters, faint at first, gradually became more pronounced, forming a cryptic message beneath the surface. Don't let it hear you. Her heart skipped a beat as she took a step back, noticing something unsettling: a series of tiny handprints imprinted in the wet paint, positioned too high for a child to reach. This discovery within the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the genesis of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had purchased the Victorian-style home at a surprisingly low price, unaware of the dark history that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Klein arrived at the doorstep, her notebook ready to uncover the truth. The pregnant woman who answered the door, her belly swollen beneath splattered overalls, recounted the eerie findings with a tremor in her voice. The detective observed the exhaustion etched in the woman's features, a result of sleepless nights spent pondering the enigma. The woman revealed how the previous owners had abruptly vanished, leaving under the cloak of darkness without a trace. No moving trucks, just essentials hastily packed into their car. Detective Klein ventured through the aged halls of the historic residence, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight. In the nursery, she scrutinized the half-painted wall, the hidden message still visible where the brushstrokes abruptly ended. Beside it, 5 small handprints lingered in the fresh paint, placed at a height that defied logic. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into the property records, unearthing a troubling pattern of turnover. The house had changed owners 8 times in 3 decades, each family fleeing after brief stays. More chilling were the child welfare reports linked to 3 of those families, detailing whispers from unseen entities and spectral watchers. The detective delved deeper, combing through construction logs and historical accounts that shed light on the house's past. Eleanor Blackwood, a childless widow who once ran an orphanage on the property, emerged as a central figure in the haunting narrative. 5 children had vanished under her care, presumed to have run away. Yet upon Eleanor's death, a hidden chamber was discovered behind the nursery wall, filled with remnants of the missing children but devoid of their bodies. The mystery had lingered, unsolved and forgotten. Interviews with former residents unveiled a recurring theme of inexplicable phenomena: the rearranging of toys, ghostly laughter in empty corridors, and mysterious writings on the walls. The sinister message, warning future inhabitants, bore the unmistakable handwriting of Eleanor Blackwood herself. Even more perplexing were the handprints unchanged over the years, despite different children residing in the home. The investigation took a chilling turn when the detective gained permission to scan the basement with ground-penetrating radar, revealing anomalies beneath the concrete floor. 5 distinct shapes, reminiscent of child-sized figures, lurked beneath the surface. Breaking through the concrete unveiled a grim truth: 5 sets of remains, arranged in a macabre circle, confirming the fate of the missing orphans. Luminol sprayed in the nursery unveiled a haunting sight: countless handprints glowing in the darkness, a testament to the children's futile attempts to escape their tragic end. Eleanor's journals, recovered from archives, exposed her twisted belief in harnessing the children's essence for her own longevity. The case concluded with a proper burial for the victims, their names finally etched in history as innocent souls lost to a malevolent scheme. The house stood silent, its walls holding onto spectral echoes of the past. The nursery was dismantled, the handprints erased, but whispers persisted within the debris. Workers reported hearing phantom voices, refusing to linger after their tasks were done. The once grand residence was condemned, its secrets locked within its forsaken chambers, a cold case left to gather dust, a reminder that some mysteries transcend time and mortal reckoning. Detective Klein retained a photograph from the investigation, a haunting image of 5 luminous handprints etched in the darkness, a poignant reminder that the echoes of the past can never truly be silenced, lingering like phantoms in the night. Story 26, The Costume Shop. The old costume shop was in its final days, the air heavy with the weight of memories as it sold off its ancient inventory. Among the forgotten treasures, a woman named Evelyn discovered a mask tucked away on a dusty shelf. Its delicate features held a strange, unsettling, lifelike quality that drew her in. When she brought it to the cashier to purchase, a sense of unease filled the air. "That's not ours," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. Confused, Evelyn glanced at the mask in her hands, only to find it devoid of any identifying tag. In a nonchalant manner, she decided to take it home with her. That night, as the world outside slumbered in silence, Evelyn was stirred awake by a soft, almost imperceptible sound, a whisper of fabric shifting through the darkness. Her heart quickened as she scanned the room, her eyes landing on the nightstand. There, bathed in the moonlight filtering through the curtains, sat the mask she had brought home earlier. But now it was turned towards her, its empty gaze fixated upon her own. Days passed and whispers of Evelyn's disappearance began to circulate through the neighborhood. Her friend Sarah went to check on her one morning, only to find the front door ajar, inviting in the golden light of dawn to illuminate the eerie stillness within. The house was quiet, save for the creaking of floorboards underfoot. Upon entering Evelyn's bedroom, Sarah's eyes fell upon a scene that sent shivers down her spine. Evelyn lay on the floor, her body unnaturally still, the mask nowhere to be seen. Detective Harper was called to the scene, her presence a beacon of authority in the midst of the unsettling mystery that unfolded before her. As the forensics team meticulously combed through the room, Detective Harper observed the details with a keen eye. A drawer slightly ajar, a half-empty water glass with traces of lipstick on the rim, mundane, yet somehow out of place in the context of the tragedy that had befallen Evelyn. The medical examiner, a solemn figure in a sea of confusion, examined Evelyn's body and pronounced the cause of death as enigmatic. No visible wounds marred her skin, no signs of a struggle to be found. Yet the expression frozen on Evelyn's face spoke volumes of a terror that transcended the physical realm. Evelyn's life, once shrouded in the quietude of an art appraiser's routine, now lay exposed to the harsh light of scrutiny. Colleagues spoke of her keen eye for authenticity, her ability to discern the genuine from the counterfeit with ease. Had this very talent led her down a path of darkness she could not foresee? The investigation took a haunting turn as security footage from the costume shop revealed a peculiar interaction between the cashier and the mysterious mask. The shop's owner, when consulted, denied any knowledge of such an item ever gracing their shelves. A sense of foreboding settled over the detective as she delved deeper into the shop's history. The threads of the investigation wove together when microscopic fibers, foreign and enigmatic, were discovered on Evelyn's fingertips. A blend of human hair and an unidentified organic substance hinted at a connection to something beyond the realm of comprehension. Further digging unearthed a chilling pattern of similar deaths linked to the acquisition of strange masks, each victim bearing the unmistakable mark of terror in their final moments. The retired detective, a relic of a bygone era of investigations, shared a piece of the puzzle, a journal hidden in Evelyn's apartment, detailing her descent into a world of fear and paranoia. The journal spoke of a malevolent force tied to the ancient symbols found within the masks, a dark ritual of soul transference that spanned centuries. Evelyn's research had led her to the chilling realization that the mask she had unwittingly brought into her home was no mere object. It was a vessel of unspeakable power, hungry for souls to claim as its own. As the investigation unfolded, a sinister truth emerged. The cause of Evelyn's death was revealed to be a heart seized by fear, so profound it silenced her very essence. Surveillance footage from a vigilant neighbor captured a figure leaving Evelyn's home in the dead of night, wearing the mask with a familiarity that sent chills down the detective's spine. Months passed and the case remained unsolved, a specter looming over the community like a shadow in the night. Reports surfaced of a peculiar mask resurfacing in a distant vintage shop, its origins shrouded in mystery. The cycle continued, whispers of the mask's malevolence drifting through the ether. The detective, burdened with the weight of knowledge too dark to share, kept Evelyn's journal close at hand, a grim reminder of the horrors that lurked beyond the veil of reality. As night descended, she would sometimes startle awake, a sense of unease gripping her heart as she scanned the darkened corners of her room. The mask, ancient and hungry, waited patiently for its next unwitting victim, its empty eyes fixed on a world ripe for the taking. And in the stillness of the night, as sleep claimed the restless, it whispered a promise of eternal darkness to those who dared to gaze upon its visage. Story 27. The vacant apartment stood silent, untouched by human presence for months on end. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, their expectations were minimal, perhaps a layer of dust, some abandoned furniture left behind. Yet there was one door that stubbornly resisted their efforts to open it. A closet, locked tightly from within, holding its secrets close. With a determined push, the landlord finally broke the seal, revealing what lay hidden inside. Instead of the anticipated old coats or forgotten trinkets, a chilling sight greeted their eyes. The walls of the closet bore deep, jagged scratches, etched into the wood with a sense of urgency and fear. And nestled in the corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its battery long drained except for one unread message glowing faintly on the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a seasoned investigator accustomed to the darker sides of humanity, felt a shiver run down her spine at the scene before her. It wasn't the presence of blood or overt violence that unsettled her, but rather the silent testimony of those desperate markings. Someone had been trapped within that confined space, fighting against unseen forces. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who was diligently capturing every detail of the scratch marks on camera. "And fetch me the records of the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone simply stated, "I know what you did." The landlord, a man with nervous eyes and perpetually clammy palms, stammered out a tale of the previous tenant's sudden disappearance, leaving behind unpaid rent. A quiet young woman kept to herself, left without a trace about 6 months back, he muttered, avoiding eye contact in the ominous closet. Forensics uncovered a disturbing revelation within the scratch marks: multiple blood samples, mostly belonging to a single individual presumed to be the missing tenant, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old woman who had been reported missing by her workplace after vanishing without a trace. However, 2 distinct DNA samples emerged from the analysis, one unidentified in the database, the other belonging to a man who had been declared dead for 2 years. "This defies all logic," Shaw murmured, studying the perplexing findings in the lab report. Derek Mercer, a convicted criminal declared deceased in a car accident, now left his genetic imprint on the walls of the closet where Emma had suffered. Emma's apartment whispered a tale of interrupted existence, stacks of unopened mail, a lonely coffee mug sitting unwashed in the sink, a bed meticulously made. Her phone records hinted at a sudden cessation of regular calls to her sister, replaced by a barrage of unknown numbers in the weeks leading to her disappearance. The sister mentioned a mysterious boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name given, just described as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured a shadowy figure, obscured by a baseball cap, trailing Emma into her building on a fateful night. The missing puzzle pieces began to align when partial fingerprints matching Derek Mercer were discovered on the closet's interior doorknob. He staged his own death, Shaw concluded, but why and what ties him to Emma? The enigmatic DNA sample led them to another missing person, Lynette Porter, who had vanished 3 years prior. A link emerged as neighbors identified a woman resembling Lynette visiting Emma's apartment multiple times. Piecing together the fragments of the puzzle, Shaw uncovered a trail leading to a secluded property owned by the Mercer family. Behind imposing basement doors, they unearthed Lynette Porter alive but emaciated, imprisoned in conditions mirroring Emma's confinement. "He forced me to witness," Lynette murmured, her gaze vacant. "Said I had to learn the price of defiance." The evidence accumulated journals detailing Mercer's fixation on dominance, photographs of women resembling Emma and Lynette, and damning video footage of Mercer coercing Emma into the closet. He feared her revelations, his voice echoed in the recordings. "No one exposes my truths." A manhunt spanning jurisdictions ensued as forensic profilers unraveled Mercer's sinister motives. Beyond mere murder, he reveled in inflicting suffering, watching hope wither away in claustrophobic spaces. Upon Mercer's apprehension at a bus terminal, his demeanor remained eerily composed. "She sent that message herself," he asserted about the phone. "She sought discovery but didn't merit salvation." The trial unveiled Mercer's elaborate charade to feign his demise, utilizing dental records from a vagrant matching his physical attributes. For years, he roamed undetected, preying on women resembling his initial victim. Emma's remains eluded discovery, suggesting her tragic demise within the confines of the closet, clawing futilely at unyielding walls. After a mere 4-hour deliberation, the jury delivered a resounding guilty verdict on all charges. As Mercer received a life sentence devoid of parole, a faint smile graced his lips, hinting at a private rationale known solely to him. During sentencing, Lynette Porter addressed the courtroom. "He entrapped us in confined spaces because that's where his soul languishes imprisoned in shadows. While he festers in his cell, I'll bask in the light." The case reshaped departmental procedures for missing persons inquiries, emphasizing relational patterns and property inspections. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's abode as a somber memento in her office, a poignant reminder that the most harrowing crime scenes aren't always drenched in blood, but in the anguished marks of a soul fighting for survival.